Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Friday, everybody. It's game day eve, as our girl Karen likes to say. Hopefully she pops in the live chat at some point today, but Notre Dame plays tomorrow at noon. Sean, we don't have to wait until nighttime to watch Notre Dame kickoff. Hopefully there's no weather delays. Hopefully we can just watch a Notre Dame football game from start to finish without any sort of hiccups. But it is Friday. You know what that means for us here at the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are talking RTCF today, and we have a bunch of different topics coming your way. And it feels like, and I understand why, there's been some negative spin on a lot of different things around Notre Dame. Rightfully so. They didn't get off to the season that we wanted to, but we wanted to talk change. We wanted to talk some turnarounds. So today on the RTCF show, we're going to start in part one, talking about which recruiting class at Notre Dame will be the most impactful in this turnaround that they can have this year. We're going to be talking about classes 22 to 25. And it's not as clear-cut as you would think. And then we're also going to talk about some players that will have the biggest role in this turnaround. Part two, when we dive more into the team, we're going to talk about the biggest fixes and adjustments on offense and defense. Now, we're staying away from personnel changes. We're not talking fire this coach or get rid of this coach or start to hire this coach. We are talking moving forward, not just against Arkansas. What does the offense and defense need to do to let us know that they're starting to turn the corner? And then in part three of today's show, we're going to go over, this is a fun weekend of college football. A lot of awesome games, Sean. And I, for one, am also happy that Notre Dame plays at noon because we're going to get to watch some of the night games on Saturday that should be pretty telling and have a lot of playoff implications moving forward. But we kind of sorted them into two buckets. And we're talking teams with the most to prove and the teams with the most at stake. I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation. And if we have time for it, we're going to do a mailbag at the end of the show. Can't guarantee it because we're two guys that like to talk quite a bit, Sean. Nothing wrong with that. But make sure that as the show goes on, you get in your questions, your comments, put a little MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji to let us know to set that question aside. Super chats get bumped up to the top. We'll go for a little bit of time after the show if we have enough time left. But Sean, happy Friday. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful, man. I get the chance to do a show with Trev, go watch some good high school football with some Notre Dame targets tonight, and then tomorrow morning wake up and watch the Fighting Irish and do a post-game show. So my next 24 hours are going to be pretty good. 24 to 36 hours are going to be pretty good.
Do a post-game show while the sun's still up, Sean. When's the last time we got to say that? Hey, man.
I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm extremely, extremely happy that we get to have a fun slate. I've been doing shows with everybody this week. We did the spread option last night. That was just me. That was my first ever solo show. I'm on another show with you, Sean. I was obviously doing shows with Brian. I was on the radio spot with Sean Stiers. We're doing a lot of fun stuff. But I'm happy that on Friday, you and I get to sit down, talk some RTCF, talk some Notre Dame football, man. So let's dive into this, Sean. It is extremely obvious that up to this point, Notre Dame has not been off to the start that they wanted to have, nor the start that we as fans wanted them to have. There's some things that have happened that we just didn't really calculate. But reality is Notre Dame is 1-2. They're still ranked in the top 25, and they do have the opportunity in front of them to start stacking some wins, and they have the opportunity in front of them to maybe put themselves in playoff discussion. I know that conversation's a little bit farther away, and it's taken me some time to come around to it, but at the end of the day, that is what's in front of you. It really is. And in order to do so, Sean, I think that Notre Dame is going to need to rely on a couple of their recruiting classes to help kind of jumpstart this turnaround. Last year we looked and we talked a lot about the team captains and how integral, their leadership was to the success. But you also had a bunch of different other leaders on the team to kind of help kickstart the turnaround outside of the 5 team captains that you had. And so we wanted to sit down and break down which recruiting classes that we thought had the best opportunity to help Notre Dame turn their season around. And Sean, like I said, when you dive into it and you start looking at the members of each class, it's not as clear-cut as you would think. Definitely not. But Sean, today we're taking a look at recruiting classes 2022 to 2025. When you look at this big picture, Sean, what do these classes need to do to start igniting this turnaround?
Bringing back memories here, man, as I started to really dig deep into each class. And once again, just think about the conversations when these young men were thinking about committing to Notre Dame and the impact they had. For me, the 23 class will always have a special place in my heart because that was the class that talked that talk. They were the first class that even before they came into Notre Dame, they were talking about winning a national championship and getting to a national championship. So that's always been like my favorite class that I covered, and probably the closest I had a chance to get with parents of a class. So it might be a little biased. So I'm gonna try to be objective here and keep it on the field when we break down the level of importance for Notre Dame to get better throughout this season, big picture. But I just think we have bits and pieces of importance to the Notre Dame cause moving forward from every class from 22 to 25. 25 being the new guys that are on campus, and they provide the depth because of injuries that probably are going to pop up. We've seen it already with Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden having to play with the return of Leonard Moore, whether it's this week or next week. Devontae Smith is probable to come back this week. So, you might see Dallas Golden and used in some other spots. So it's going to be really important to see the 25 class be that added depth with the talent that's there. But then the 24 class, I feel like adds those top tier guys where you saw Notre Dame going out and getting more elite players in the 24 class. And you're going to see KVA and other guys from that class start to really make an impact. And that could cause things to change around. Then you go to 23 class, like I talk about the class that was really, the first time starters last year when Notre Dame made that run. And they were the guys that said, we're going to bring a national championship. So they're like the foundational guys to that movement in a sense. And then the 22 guys are really the leaders, right? You got Emil Wagner, Billy Schrouf. So those are your leaders, and the leadership needs to step up to get Notre Dame out of this 1 and 2 hole. So I think every class serves a purpose for Notre Dame moving forward. And it's going to be really interesting to see which class can kind of come to the forefront and become playmakers in this run that we expect Notre Dame can make.
I think that's extremely well said, man. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you alluded to it. This isn't just about the performance on the field, right? Now, obviously, that's going to carry a big weight, but it's also which class is going to say, hey, look at us. Lean on us to help lead this charge into turnaround. Because at some point, you talk about programs that can be player-driven, and you talk about programs where, I think back to Notre Dame in 2017, where after that Georgia loss, Drew Tranquill sat down and said, hey, I feel sorry for anybody that has to play us in the coming weeks. What class is that going to be that says, hey, I'm not doing this anymore? What player on defense says, hey, we gave up 30 points to Purdue and 41 points to Texas A&M. That's not good enough. Hey, we needed to get stops in the A&M and the Miami game somewhere in the middle 8, and we couldn't do it. That's not good enough. What is the class and what players on offense sit back and say, hey, we got to help out our defense? Most of the people in these classes have been a part of Notre Dame football teams that have had to rely on the defense waiting for the offense to catch up. So what players in these classes say, hey, look, it's our time now, defense. Find your footing. We'll handle business until you guys get caught back up. And when we do, we're going to start humming. And I think that's what the interesting piece of this conversation is, because somebody has to. And if not, there's a bigger issue at hand. But like you said, Sean, you followed recruiting closely. You were very attached to the 2023 class and the backgrounds that they came from, talking about, we're going to be the class that brings Notre Dame a national championship. We're going to be the class that brings Notre Dame back into national contention. And every class needs to have that a little bit. So that's what makes this conversation so interesting. But when we dive into this, we'll start with the older class, the 2022 class. And as a refresher, and I'm not going to list every single player that was in these classes because some have graduated, some have transferred, others are gone. So when you look at the impact players in this class, I broke it down. Offense, defense. On offense, this is the class that has Eli Raridan, Emil Wagner, Jadarian Price, Billy Schrouf, Ashton Craig. 2 of your 16 captains are in this class on offense. And then on defense, you have Jalen Sneed, Josh Burnham, Junior Tuialamaka, and Donovan Heinisch. So 3 of your total team captains out of your 6 come from the 2022 class, Sean. Moving forward, what are some things that you think that we can expect to see from this 2022 recruiting class? Because like you said, seniority matters in this conversation. They're the ones that have been around the longest. So when you look at this class, what do you think that they need to do and show on and off the field to get this thing turned around?
Well, they need to be the bearers of the flag of this new era. They need to be the standard that every other class looks at and says, this is how we come to work every day. This is how we play every week. The opponent is faceless. It's not about the opponent we face. It's about us. It's about the expectation that we create for ourselves. That's what we face. That's what we have to deal with. And they should be the ones, like you said, 2 of the 6 captains come from this class, and those captains are in the trenches. Marcus Freeman says this is an offensive and defensive line driven program. Well, hey, 2 of your 6 guys are in those trenches, and they need to make sure that the attitude, the preparation, the standard for everyone else on a day-to-day basis flows through them. Like, you go as we go, because we're going to lead the way and show you how to do it. And so for me, that is what they mean. I don't think it's the most talented class. I don't, we talk about game changers. I wouldn't particularly say, or gap closers. I wouldn't say this class has more gap closers than some of the other classes on the roster, but they were the beginning. They should be the anchor for this team. They should be the anchor for belief that, yes, we're going to win 10 straight. We're going to do this. We believe in what our coach has laid. We believe in what our assistant coaches are giving us, and everybody has to get on board. They have to be the ones to bring everyone together and silence all the murmuring and complaining, if that indeed is taking place, or any type of divisiveness. They have to be able to silence that and calm that down and get everybody focused, along with the coaches, of course, because that's the coach's responsibility. But you would expect your seniors and your leaders to be able to do that for your younger, talented players.
I agree. I agree completely. And it's almost like, when we have this conversation, Sean, it's almost like we separate it into different roles. What role does each class have? And I agree with you completely that while the 22 class might not have the star power of the 23 and 24 class, their role is going to be very important, being the seniors and being the elder, classmen of this team. And I think that's going to be extremely important moving forward. And not to say that they don't have immense star power. I mean, this is a class with Jadarian Price, who's had, 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games. So I don't want to make it sound like there's just a bunch of try-hard duds in this class. They have Eli Raridan in this class. Junior Tui Alamaka's in this class. A captain, Donovan Heinisch, is in this class. And then Shrouthen Wagner and Craig. 3 or 5 starting offensive linemen come from the 2022 class. So that's extremely, extremely impactful. But to your point, Sean, I guess you call them the gap closers of this Notre Dame team might not necessarily live in the 22 class. Those kind of come in the 23 and the 24 class. So, Sean, let's talk a little bit about that 2023 class. On offense, you have guys like Jeremiah Love, Jaden Greathouse, KK Smith is in this class. Charles Jagasaw was in this class, Sullivan Absher, Kenny Minchie. And then defensively, you have Boubacar Traore, Armel Mukam, Christian Gray, Drake Bowen, Jaden Osbury, Don Schuler, Preston Zinner, and Ben Minnick. Just to name a few that are consistently in the rotation, whether it be offense, defense, special teams. So, Sean, when you look at this group, what role do you think that they have in this turnaround? Because like we said, the 22 class is kind of, hey, look to us to right the ship. Let us handle some of that outside noise because we have that experience. Is their role in your eyes kind of okay, now that they have this taken care of, we're going to go eat. We're going to get out on the field and handle business. How do you view this 2023 class, Sean?
I think this 23 class had the bravado and the belief, like you said, that we're going to get to a national championship and win it. And when they became first-time starters, then you saw this team go on that national championship run, but they were able to play because they had great leadership that was showing them the way. And see, this is why the 22 class is so important to these guys, because now you have a few of these guys that are stepping into leadership for the first time and really learning the mechanics of what it takes to be a leader. And so they need those 22 guys to be there for them as anchors. But they are, in my opinion, the belief in we are an elite program. Like we are talented enough to go up against the best teams. And so that right there for me is what they brought. And this is interesting because I always include CJ Carr in the 23 class. I include him in the 23 class because he committed during their cycle early and is connected to, as you said before, the quarterback ended up being Kenny Minchie. But for a long time, whether you want to call him a silent commit or whatever, Dante Moore was considered to be in the class, and he was the quarterback of the class. I remember conversations with Drake Bowen throughout the cycle where, we would be sharing information back and forth like, man, have you heard anything from Dante? And I was receiving my information through Carnell Tate, who was another guy that they were trying to get in the 23 class because Carnell Tate and Dante Moore were best friends. So Dante Moore was on the same 7-on-7 team with CJ Carr. CJ Carr was his backup on that team. So the issue was probably if Dante Moore commits to Notre Dame, CJ Carr doesn't come to Notre Dame because he didn't want to be behind Dante Moore, because he had been behind Dante Moore on the 7-on-7 and pretty much had been in his shadow his entire high school career because Dante Moore was the guy in Michigan. So Dante Moore leaves, that opens the door. Immediately, they call Tommy Rees. CJ commits early, and now we're reaping the benefits of Dante Moore not being at Notre Dame. And then we add Kenny Minchie, who becomes part of that rivalry, if you want to call it that, through the summer in the quarterback battle. So all of these things are an absolute layer and nuance to this 23 class and what is meant. I think there are so many dominoes that came from the 23 class and the promise they bought. And then Christian Gray, Drake Bowen, Jeremiah Love, Charles Jagasaw, even in his absence. Cooper Flanagan has the ability to come back. Boubacar Traore, if he gets going. Talk about your boy, Armel Mookum. If he can get a shot, can he be that guy? Sullivan Absher was battling with Gerby Lambert at right guard, and then he can still play other positions as well. Jaden Greathouse, will he have a few breakout games? Adon Schuler, along with Drake Bowen, two of your captains. Brennan Vernon is still a name that you're waiting to see if he can make some hay. And then Christopher Tarrick is a backup. KK Smith is finally seeing some action. And you heard about Preston Zinner coming on this spring and this summer. So even with the departures, and Jaden Osbury, I forgot to mention him, even with the departures, you see the depth of this class and the talent that it brings to the football field. And so for me, objectively, the 23 and 24 classes are really where your gap closers are housed for this program. But that 22 class needs to be able to be, that anchor for both of these classes moving forward.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, look, at the end of the day, last season, you and I, along with Brian and Vince and Sean Stiers, we sat here and talked about how that sophomore class, the 2023 class, was going to, the talent level in that class is what was going to propel Notre Dame forward as a program. Now this season, hey, you don't have that sophomore surge. Like, you don't have that, like, I'm talking the 23 class is not sophomores anymore. In the similar conversation that we had to Leonard Moore, hey, can you prove that you're elite, not just for a freshman, but that you are now an elite cornerback? That's a little bit how I view this 2023 class. Can you go out and prove that you're not just elite for sophomores? Can you now go out and prove that you are one of the elite recruiting classes in college football? Because when you have guys like Christian Gray and Adon Schuler and Drake Bowen and Jaden Osbury, Jeremiah Love, Jaden Greathouse. Now, like we're going to get into in part 2 of the show, there are reasons why some of these guys haven't necessarily had the performance that we thought that they were going to have in 2024 and 2025. But at the end of the day, you need this gap closing class to be what they are. You need them to perform at their highest level. You need them to be let off the leash. So I think the 23 class is going to play a huge, huge factor in this turnaround on the field and off the field. And now when we get into the 2024 class, I talk about them in a similar light to how we talked about last year's sophomore class. Hey, can this be the group that, is kind of the icing on the cake? Can you continue to add on to what the 23 class has already built? Because you look on offense. As weird as it sounds, your 5 starting offensive linemen come either in the 2022 class or the 2024 class right now. On offense, you have CJ Carr, Gerby Lambert, Micah Gilbert, Anthony Knapp. Jack Larson has seen some snaps. And then on defense, you have Kingston Viliamasa, Bryce Young, Logan Thomas, Tate Johnson, Leonard Moore, Carson Hobbs, who I know is buried right now, but at some point they're going to need him in the season again. Telling you at some point. I don't know if that's going to be at nickel, but he's going to have to be ready whenever his number is called. And then you also have Cole Mullins, Sean Sevillano. So, this is a class where, again, you look at it and there's gap closers in this class. CJ Carr's a gap closer. Gerby Lambert is a gap closer. KVA is a gap closer. Bryce Young is a gap closer. Tate Johnson is a gap closer. So you have, Sean, all of these players that now take on the role that the 2023 class had last year. And they start to fill in some of the gaps. I mean, some of the gaps they're already filling have been by necessity because of injury. Gerby Lambert has to step up at right guard because Charles Jagasaw went down with an injury. And 2024 Gerby Lambert commit has outplayed 2023 commit Sullivan Absher to be Notre Dame starting right guard. So when you look at this 24 class, Sean, do you view it the same way that I do, as they now kind of wear the mantle of what 2024 or 2023 class had last year? Do you view them similarly? You're muted, Sean.
Can you hear me? You got me now? Okay, I'm sorry. No, they definitely step in where the other class vacated. That's the way you put it, explained it perfectly. And for me, they are the higher ceiling guys, really. When you look at it from let's say, an NFL scouting standpoint, you start to get to that 24 class and you start to say, okay, Notre Dame in that 24 class really has some guys. Gerby Lambert, first round. Bryce Young has the talent, be day 1, day 2. Kingston has the talent, day 1, day 2. CJ Carr, if he continues, day 1, day 2. Tate Johnson has a chance with his athleticism to be day 1, day 2. Leonard Moore, day 1, day 2. So you start going down the list of guys in the 24 class, and you're like, okay, this could be the class where you get 6 or 7 guys in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, and Notre Dame hasn't had that. How does that boost recruiting? And so now you're starting to see gap closers, even on a greater level, to the point now we're talking about, man, what is this 26 class going to be down the road? Because you're talking about upwards of 8 to 10 guys just right now where you say they have the talent and ability possibly to be first, second round, day 1, day 2 guys in NFL draft. So I agree with you. I think you see the ascension of ceiling when it comes to talent and gap closing with each class. And I think for them, the disappointment for me is the lack of leadership and your 22 guys not playing to their level every week. Your consistency needs to come from the 22 guys, right? Emil Wagner, by this point, you know what you're getting every week at right tackle. Right now you do feel like you know what you're getting from left guard every week. Eli Raritan, every week, needs to give us the same thing. That needs to be the consistency. The up and downs, you still maybe see that in the 24 class. Of course, you're going to get the up and down from the 25 class, but that 23 class should be right behind 22 with steadiness. Like there shouldn't be, bad games and then, okay, that was a better game. It should be, all right, we know we're going to get, but they still have room to grow as well. So we're waiting to see all of that come together, because I think that's something that you had last year. You knew what Jack Kaiser was going to give you every week. You knew what X was going to give you every week. And I think that's what we expect of the 22 class and the 23 class to be ascending to that point, kind of being, having those same expectations. But yeah, you laid it out perfectly. I think they're stepping into that. We're the guys that are going to come in, bring the energy, bring the excitement, bring the flair. That's kind of what that 23 class did last year for the veterans that were there, that were just consistent, steady. They told you what was happening every play, where you were supposed to be. They knew their responsibility. They knew the other players' responsibility. And so that new mixture, we'll see whether or not it comes together. They're too talented. And I know fans get tired of hearing that because, you can be talented, but it comes down to whether or not you can win games at the end of the day. But this team is extremely talented. They really are. Now they just have to go and put it together. And just to bring clarity, I saw somebody in the chat ask, CJ Carr did not commit before the Dante Moore saga. Remember, all the news broke. Dante was at a camp, 7-on-7 camp. The news broke concerning him in Notre Dame. The conversation had already taken place with Tommy Rees and CJ Carr. They were checking in to make sure things were going a certain way. And then he ended up committing. And then somebody said Dante Moore isn't exactly lighting it up. Dante Moore in the season is 73% completion percentage, 749 yards, 10 yards per completion, 11 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I'm sorry, 962 yards. That's not too bad.
So that's all right.
Yeah. It's not too bad. I think Notre Dame either way would have won.
Yeah.
If he had stayed and CJ. So Tommy Rees, thank you for the parting gift.
Shout out to Tommy Rees. I agree. But look, man, I agree with you wholeheartedly that this is the class that needs to bring the energy. And I think they've shown that on the field. I mean, Sean, who's one of the most consistently hyped up people on offense? CJ Carr.
Yeah.
Who has been one of your most ferocious offensive linemen so far in terms of driving people off the ball? Yes, he's making some redshirt freshman mistakes. Mm-hmm. But who's been one of your most aggressive offensive linemen off the ball? It's Gerby Lambert. He was absolutely moving people. Now, the redshirt freshman mistake is sometimes he was moving people in the wrong direction, but he was absolutely moving people. You look at it on defense. Who's been one of the most impactful players on defense so far this season? Kingston. Who's started every game at defensive end? Bryce Young. Who's now starting at field safety? Tay Johnson. Who's the best corner in college football right now? Leonard Moore. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. This is kind of the class that brings the juice because we are talking about them in the same light that we talked about the 23 class last year. Who's one of the best running backs in college football? It's Jeremiah Love, class of 23. Who had that big breakout at the end of the postseason? Jaden Greathouse. Who came in and helped perform on the offensive line in the last 2 games of the season? Charles Jagasaw. And then obviously we know what Bowen and Gray and Osbury and Schuler all did. Boubacar Traore was off to a tear before he got hurt. So this 23 and 24 class combination is going to be really one to keep your eye out for, as Notre Dame tries to turn their season around. I think those are going to be 2 classes that they rely on. But Sean, the last class that we're going to talk about today are the true freshmen, 2025 class. This class, it's definitely more of a stronger conversation on defense than it is on offense, just because we haven't seen, I don't know if we've seen any true freshmen play on offense in a meaningful situation. But the ones that could down the road, in my eyes, kind of comes down to 3: Nolan James Jr., Elijah Burris, and James Flanagan at tight end. Those barring, and I'm talking injury aside. I mean, if somebody gets hurt on the offensive line, do they dance around with the idea of putting in an Owen Strebig, a Matty Augustine, a Will Black? Maybe. I don't know, but I'm not willing to bet on it, nor do I want there to be an injury to happen for that to happen. On defense, it's a little more likely because we've already seen it. We've seen Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden have to come in and play. And then at some point, there's no way you can keep Jadon Blair on the sideline. There's just no way. Whether that's offense, defense, special teams, that kid can help you out somewhere. So I'm adding him to this list as well. Could there be others? Maybe. Could we see a Christopher Burgess? Potentially. We've already seen Madden Faramo on the field. So those are kind of the big 4 on defense in this freshman class: Zachary, Golden, Madden Faramo, and then ideally Jadon Blair down the road. But how do you see this freshman class, Sean? Because this is interesting. Because last year, one of the exciting things about this team was the freshman class. You had concerns about Benjamin Morrison being out for the rest of the season. Who steps in? Leonard Moore, who is a true freshman. You had some concerns, not concerns, but you kind of needed that dual threat player at linebacker, somebody that could rush the passer and play inside of the box. You had that in Kingston Viliamasa. So how do you view this freshman class and what their role is despite their limited opportunities to play, Sean?
Well, it's interesting that you were talking. I'm like, man, this is recruiting, and the transfer portal is a big part of recruiting now. Like, man, are we including the transfers in this? Because if we include the transfers in the 25 class, then it's going to make a huge difference. When you talk about the impact of Malachi Fields, Devontae Smith, Jared Dawson, those are pretty good upgrades on what we've seen in the transfer portal, particularly offensively for the Fighting Irish. So, but Madden Faramo, what he did last week, you expect him to continue to get reps. You talk about Jadon Blair finally getting on the actual depth chart this week. Dallas Golden, you saw the interception. I expect Mark Zachary to get better, especially with the return of Leonard Moore, and he can still come in spots and not really be targeted and learn and get reps and get better. I think that's going to make a huge difference. I honestly thought James Flanagan would want to be one of the guys in this class to make an early impact. We haven't seen that. But Ty Washington through the transfer portal is somebody you can consider. And then, you talk about not Elijah Burris, but Scrap Richardson and what he's meant just from, Elijah Burris, and Scrap Richardson are two guys later on in the season offensively that I think can get some looks as well. So for me, this class, really after the 24 class, a lot of people look at the 25 class like it's a step back or like it was a step back from the high of the 24 class, and the 24 class built on that 23 class. And then the 25 class was kind of like, okay, not as good as those classes, but solid. But like you said, you look at the kids that they got and have already started to get run, make a play, especially defensively, and you like what you see. So the 25 class definitely has an impact. I don't know if they have that Benjamin Morrison, Leonard Moore guy that makes an immediate impact in the secondary. I guess Dallas Golden could be that, but he was working primarily in the nickel. We'll see the return of Devontae Smith if they find a way to keep him in the rotation and keep him on the field at the same time as Devontae Smith. So maybe he ends up playing the field, along with Mark Zachary. But it's going to be interesting to see how this 25 class is kind of like rolled out and unveiled before everybody as we go throughout the season. This 4-game gauntlet, I know you guys talked about it. I said it, this 4-game gauntlet is the season for me. This is going to tell you who Notre Dame is the next 4 games, right? And if guys like Mark Zachary, Dallas Golden, and Jadon Blair can make an impact and make impact plays, that's going to say a lot about the rest of the season and like the forecast for the playoffs for this roster. Because now you're talking about that depth being real. The depth that was there last year for the playoff run and playing those extra games, you get the same confidence for that depth if guys like Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Jadon Blair, and some of the other kids in the 25 class, Elijah Burris, if they can come on and make some plays, you're going to feel really good about where this team is going to be from a roster depth standpoint going into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I see that the exact same. If Notre Dame can get to their next bye week after USC unscathed, then the conversation about a turnaround looks significantly different than what it does right now, the day before they take on Arkansas. But you got to start laying the foundational pieces right now. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Notre Dame is favored by FanDuel to win by 4.5 points. It starts this upcoming week, and we're going to have more to talk about that when we talk about teams with the most at stake in the final part of the show today. But look, Sean, you're absolutely right. I think this next run is going to be very telling of what Notre Dame is going to be able to do as far as the turnaround goes, but they're going to need these classes. Each one has their own individual role, like we just kind of carved out. I guess to tie a bow on this segment, Sean, who would you say player-wise, and this could be a whole class, these could be individuals, but what players do you think need to step up the most on or off the field to kind of ignite this and get this thing going?
Oh, it starts with the 22 class for me, right? The first thing you hear from people, we miss Jack Kaiser's leadership. Man, we miss X on the back end. Yeah. We miss Riley Mills, Howard Cross up the middle. Yeah. Because your leaders should be what steadies you during turbulence. Like that's what they're there for. They steady the ship. They keep everything going straight ahead. And so that 22 class has to be that, in my opinion. Billy Shrouf has to be that. Emil Wagner, your play moving forward, your play tomorrow has to be steady, good, week to week, an anchor to allow CJ Carr to become the quarterback we all think he can be, to give those two running backs room to run and be dominant like we know and feel like they can be on a week-to-week basis. You have to have that, because when you have those senior leaders playing to that level, it's not all talk, Trev. It's not all talk. Like, you know how it is to have leadership in front of you that's not playing worth a darn. You play football, I play basketball. I know what it's like to have leadership that's not playing worth a darn, not giving effort, but they're doing a lot of this. It's a lot easier to follow you when you're actually doing what you're talking about and they match up. So it's one thing for them to talk about it, but the other players have to see them actually walking in it so that they can follow and say, yep, let's go. And so for me, it's the 22 class. We can talk about talent. We can talk about everything else. For me, it just has to be those 22 guys leading the way, especially with the adversity that they're facing. And I'm sure they're going to be in some game moving forward where everything's going to be on the line. They're behind in the fourth quarter, and they have to get over that hump of not finishing in the fourth quarter. They're going to have another moment in this season where they're going to have to stare that in the face, and it's going to take leadership that makes them get over that hump.
Well, I agree, and I think it starts with the 22 class as well. More specifically, 3 of your 6 captains on the team are in the 22 class. For this to be a partially player-driven team, we know how much emphasis Marcus Freeman puts on the captains. He says that they are an extension of himself because at the end of the day, he's one person. And I do firmly believe that this program is still bought into what he's trying to build, but at the end of the day, there's not enough time in the day for him to sit down with every individual person in the locker room and say, hey, you good? That responsibility falls on the team captains. And outside of the transfer, obviously 5 of the 6 team captains are between the 22 and the 23 class. But in that 22 class, you need Billy Shrouf. You need Donovan Heinisch. You need Emil Wagner to step up and say, hey, we got this. Look to us. When it's in the fourth quarter and you're in a shootout, or when it's in the fourth quarter and we need to stop, you need those guys to look up to. Why? Because you had that last season. Sean, how many times do we sit back in the postgame show and say, man, thank goodness they have Xavier Watts. Man, I was watching that opposing team driving down the field and X comes up with a pick, changes the momentum of the game. How many times do we say, gosh, 3rd and 3, need a conversion here. Riley Leonard gets the ball, runs quarterback power, quarterback counter, quarterback draw, picks up the first down, ices the game. How many times did we see that last year? Yes, the performance on the field means a lot, but it's all the things that go into it, the preparation, how you prepare for these games. That's where they need this class the most, truthfully. Because let's be real about something, Sean. Of all the talent on this team, some of it does reside in the 22 class. You know, this is a class that does have Jadarian Price, someone that has 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games. But at the end of the day, when you're a leader of a team, if Notre Dame needs a sack on 3rd and 7 to ice the game, yes, you have Tui Alamaka and Burnham and Captain Donovan Heinisch on the team, but you're going to look to a guy like Boubacar to get after the quarterback. You're going to look to send Drake Bone or Kingston Viliamas on a fire. And I understand that completely. But how do they get prepared to handle that moment? By the leadership from the 2022 class. That is something that has to take a step up. And we're going to find out. step in the right direction, beating Purdue. But we're going to really, really find out what they're made of as they go on the road to face an Arkansas team. And Ty Washington talked about it earlier in the week, and it sounds very similar to the Miami crowd. Like, hey, they get a jump on you early. This crowd's going to be loud. They're going to be there for all 4 quarters. You're in for a battle. But if Notre Dame finds a way to jump on them, the Arkansas crowd might take a dip. It might not be
Oh,
there.
man. It's funny you say that. I actually talked to John Neighbors for Inside Arkansas, and he flat out told me this team is ready to let go of the rope. He's like the everything, the way the program is going, Sam Pittman pretty much being on the hot seat, fan base ready for a change. The majority of the fan base has already turned their eyes to John Calipari in his second season and what he's going to do for the basketball team. Like, that is the vibe. They're showing up. And he flat out said, if this was a normal team, like your average SEC team, he said the stadium wouldn't be filled. He said this stadium's going to be rocking because it's Notre Dame. And he just flat out honest. The stadium's going, people are coming this week because it's Notre Dame. Because this is a once in a lifetime experience. Notre Dame will never be in Rogers Razorback Stadium probably ever again. He was like, because they haven't then. This is the first time. What is it going to be, another 70 years before it happens? He was like, that's the reason why the stadium is going to be rocking. They'll be supporting their team. But he's like, if anything bad happens, especially early on, he was like, I just don't know if this team has the fortitude, because that's what they've been struggling with, having the fortitude to get over the hump and close. And a lot of doubt can creep in if that doubt is instilled early, either by Notre Dame or their own mistakes via the turnovers that they commit every week or the costly penalties that they commit every week. So I actually absolutely agree with you on that. Absolutely. And another kid that needs to step up in the 22 class, he's not getting a pass with me because there's a lot of football left. Jalen Sneed, make some plays. Make some plays. You have a chance to actually make some impactful plays in big moments for this team. Even if it's 1 or 2 a game. 1 or 2 a game is more than enough. Make some plays. Because that's a kid in the 22 class that I think can make a huge difference if he shows up and makes plays.
I agree completely with you, Sean. I agree. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. But don't forget to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Sean. In part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we are breaking down what Notre Dame needs to do to right the ship on offense and on defense. Now, here's a preface for everybody. We're not going to sit down and we're going to talk about fire this person, bench this person, get rid of this guy, because honestly, those are emotional responses. They are. And I honestly think to some degree they're a little lazy, because we need to dive into what do we need to see moving forward to truly say, hey, they've turned the corner. As impressive as some of what they did against Purdue was, at the end of the day, it's Purdue. You beat a team that you were supposed to beat. And on offense, it looked like how it was supposed to look. But I'm not ready to say, you know what, they're back. They beat Purdue by 26. Let's ride, get Notre Dame into the playoffs, and they're going to take off and run with it. So, working with the premise that Notre Dame still has a shot to make the playoffs, because they do, then we're going to be in a spot where we can look back at some of these keys on offense and defense and say, okay, they got some of these things corrected. And Sean, where we're going to start today is we're going to talk on the offense. And the first thing, first and foremost, that they have to do is they need to fix their pass protection. It looked better against Purdue at times. But once again, in another game, we saw a free rusher go untouched, get to CJ Carr, led to their first non-scoring drive of the game. So what does Notre Dame have to do on offense? Step 1, it's fix the pass protection, Sean. And I don't think you can go anywhere else until you get that figured out.
starts up front. Everything starts up front for this defense for me. I think everything was so well coordinated last year as far as the blitzes. And then the same thing we've talked about. Are we going to get any edge pressure, any added edge pressure? Does the added pressure need to come from the A and B gap all the time? I understand you're trying to create one-on-ones, but you don't really have elite one-on-one pass rushers. You had elite interior one-on-one pass rushers last year. So you understood why you were adding guys in there to free Howard Cross and Riley Mills up in passing situations in particular. And so since you don't have that on the interior, I would like to see some slot blitzes, some nickel blitzes, safety blitzes coming down around off the edge with a game or two connected to it. I think you need to see some more games. I would love to see more games up front, but they need to be coordinated well. Guys need to stay off the ground, and guys need to make sure that they're patient running the game. A lot of the games early on against Purdue seemed rushed, like guys were running into each other in the same gaps, and so they weren't as coordinated as you would like them to be. So hopefully that's something that they work on. But the pass rush, like you said, everything has to start there, especially if you're going to have some young people in the secondary that may need them. You don't want them to be covering as long as you might want a Leonard Moore or Devontae Smith. That means the guys up front have to be able to get home or at least get into the face and pressure the quarterback and cause him to move and take his eyes off of the receivers downfield.
Pass rush on defense, I completely agree with you, Sean. But pass protection on offense.
Oh, I apologize.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Hey, bro,
my bad.
We're talking about that too. Don't you worry. That's definitely getting covered today. But on offense, we are very well aware of what CJ Carr has done this year. And he has looked better than I thought he would have this early. I knew CJ Carr was this good. I just didn't know when we were going to see it. I didn't know if it was going to be NC State, USC, Boston College, Pitt. I wasn't expecting to see it Miami, Texas A&M, Purdue. Purdue kind of. But at the end of the day, when you start to play those higher level opponents, like Arkansas, like an NC State, like a USC, like a Boston College, like a Pitt, and Lord willing, if they make the playoffs, you're going to be facing some better edge rushers. You're going to be facing better interior rushers as well. Sean, pass protection is something that absolutely has to improve from a technical standpoint and from what they're asked to do. At this point, I'm working under the notion that Anthony Knapp is just going to be your left tackle. He is. Now, Gerby Lambert played a snap of left tackle against Purdue and looked like the most natural left tackle that you have on your roster.
In one snap, right?
In one snap. Played with great footwork, played with great technique. He had great bend. He had a stiff back. I mean, look, man, it looked great. But at the end of the day, we can sit here and make, how good would they be if they put this person in here and move this person inside? But as great of wishful thinking as that is, that's not the reality that we're living in. So they're going to have to do a good job of how do you protect guys like Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner if they continue to struggle? What do you do schematically? First thing that you can do is you can fix their technique. Sean, we did it on the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. We broke down the pass protection game and upon further review and what some of the things were that they were doing that kind of gave them issues in pass protection. Flat out, one of the guys in the class of 2022, one of your captains, right tackle, Emil Wagner, he's just not playing with the basic technique that you need to. He's crossing his feet. He's standing straight up. He's not playing with a wide base. And I think that's where you have to start with this conversation, Sean, is Notre Dame has to find a way to be more technically sound in pass protection to fully let this unit do what they need to do.
Look, the offensive line, and we talked about this, we're starting to see, I think we said it, Gerby Lambert is that guy. We talked about Notre Dame having two guys normally that are top prospects in the offensive line. And this offensive line doesn't have that right now. And Gerby Lambert is easily becoming the guy that is easy to kind of grade and just look at and say, okay, that's a dude that NFL scouts are going to say, yeah, we're looking at him day one, day two. And so from there, now you start to goes back to our previous conversation. If your 22 class at right tackle can be the anchor, how much better does that make the youngster next to him? That was the one things we said last year. Heck, Billy Shroud from the jump should have been next to Anthony Knapp because it would have helped him play much better. And if we see the ascension of Gerby Lambert, imagine how good he can be if he has a solid play next to him on the left and solid play next to him on the right. If he's in between Ashton Craig, who's been playing pretty good, and Emil Wagner playing at the level that he's expected to play at, his talent is just going to take off. It's going to take off. And so now that right side can become a dominant side in pass pro and in the run game. And so you expect the technique to get better with Gerby Lambert. He struggled with some technical things early on. He even talked about how the Miami game has helped him from going into this environment this week. And so now he won't have to think about the technique because it's kind of been ingrained in him each and every week. He's gotten better at it. So now he's really just going out there and starting to just play naturally. And so those are the things that you've seen Billy Shroud go through. Billy Shroud went through the same growth process on the offensive line, right? Ashton Craig has had to go through that. And so you expect him to have some growing pains. And personally, I would love it for his growing pains to be a left tackle. That's just my personal preference. But that's neither here nor there. And honestly, just don't give up the easy stuff, right? Like, know what you're doing. Pick up the stunts. Communicate. Be technically sound. Stop allowing defenders to get up under your pads. Keep moving your feet. Don't stop moving your feet. Play until you hear the whistle. Be aggressive. Be the one that strikes first. Stop catching. These are all fundamental things that we've seen on film, that we've heard consistently over the past year and a half. And so those are the things that if they just clean those things up, you expect this offensive line to get better. And I know people said, well, they did it against Purdue. Look, you want to do it no matter who you're playing. You want to play well regardless. And so if they did it against Purdue, it makes you feel better that they can do it against other teams moving forward. They have to do it, but at least they've set that standard to say, okay, we know we can play at this level. Let's go out there and do it again. Because that's exactly what we've seen Gerby Lambert do. He figured out game 2, oh, I can be better than I was against Miami. And he came out and he was better against Texas A&M. Oh, I can do that against Texas A&M. Now I can come out and be better against Purdue. It wasn't about the opponent. It was about him getting the opportunity and then putting the work in to be technically sound. And once you become technically and fundamentally sound, your talent takes over. And so that's what you saw with Gerby Lambert. And hopefully as a collective 5, that's what you can see from this offensive line moving forward. They become technically sound and fundamentally sound, and then their ability as a group can kind of ascend.
Agreed. I agree completely. And because like we talked about in the preseason, Sean, that's where everything starts. You can have Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, CJ Carr, Malachi Fields, Faison, Greathouse, Raritan, the list goes on and on. But if you don't handle business up front, it's going to be all for naught at the end of the day. And we've seen that happen too many times this season. And it's going to have to get turned around against Arkansas and beyond. It's not just something that's specific to this Arkansas game. It's what I love about this conversation, because it's not keys to victory to how to beat Arkansas. It's, hey, how do you right the ship? What do you need to do? The next thing that I think this offense has to do, Sean, they need to be willing to attack the middle of the field. For reasons that I still can't fathom, Purdue made it their mission to not let Notre Dame attack the middle of the field. Not saying that I'm upset about it, because Notre Dame put in yeoman's work against this defense. But look, moving forward, other defensive coordinators, I don't think are going to be that willing to let Notre Dame make big plays on the perimeter. Because if you go back and think about it, Sean, every big play that Notre Dame's offense has had this year, outside of that deep post route to Malachi Fields to open up the Purdue game, has been on the perimeter. Every big run's been to the perimeter. Eli Raritan's 2 big catches on the season has been on the perimeter. Jordan Faison's out and up was to the perimeter. Every contested catch that Malachi Fields has had up to that post route has been on the perimeter. At some point, this offense is going to have to be willing to attack you inside of the hashes. And I'm sure to Salty's dismay, that's been one of the reasons why Jaden Greathouse hasn't had that much of an impact in this offense yet. Because you have a 6'1", 215-pound slot receiver that right now defenses just are willing to say, hey, we're not gonna let him beat us over the middle of the field. That's why Mike Denbrock has had to get creative. I've had to scheme Eli Raridan open on the perimeter because he hasn't been able to attack the middle of the field. I mean, shoot, even Jeremiah Love's wheel route for a touchdown was on the perimeter against Texas A&M. We haven't seen him hit an angle route. We haven't seen him get behind the blitz. And so those are just different things that I think once this offense continues to evolve, because I think they've put out enough of a sample size to say, hey, if they beat us over the middle, they beat us over the middle. We just can't let 0, 9, 4, and 6 beat us on the perimeter, Sean. You got to be willing to attack the middle of the field moving forward.
And there, sir, I'm glad you mentioned that because, having a conversation with Malik and asking him the same question, like, what is it about the middle of the field or intermediate? It seems like CJ is avoiding that area. And he said, I agree. He said, but that's part of his development. He's getting easy access throws because they're using the hash to add numbers to the box. So it's kind of muddy because they're adding that to stop the run. He says, so now that gives you free access throws and easy throws to the perimeter. And he said, I have to give CJ credit because he's not forcing it. He's taking it. Like, yo, that's what you're giving me. I'm going to take that until you force me not to. Another thing in that, he has a true number one. Like, for a young quarterback to have a guy, they're like, I'm throwing it to him. And you heard Mike Denbrock and other coaches say, we got to target that guy. We just give him a chance. I think Gino Guidugli talked about that last week. We had to tell CJ, like, on that, you just put it on his body. Like, when you get him one-on-one, just put it on his body and give him a chance. And so when you have a guy like that, that also tends to take targets away from a Jaden Greathouse and other guys in the offense. I believe it is in the third quarter. It was about 6 minutes left. It was one particular play that I actually asked Malik about. I was 11 personnel. It came out an empty set. And CJ's first look was to the right. And Malik explained, like, that was a freshman mistake. He was like, because it was 3-on-2 up top. And it was the guy 10 yards off the ball, off Jeremiah Love at the bottom in the field. The numbers were to the field. That should have been your first look just by the numbers. But because Malachi was up top, he's used to looking that way for Malachi. He looks that way, doesn't see that he has anything there. But if he's patient, Jordan Faison is coming wide open over the middle as the play develops. And that's just him, kind of speeding through his progression and then panicking because he ended up, scrambling out to the side, running out. I think he ended up losing a yard or throwing it away. So those are just things that come with time, right? He took a step last week with the hand signal to Faison from what he saw. And so that is something else that I think is going to become more evident with him getting more reps, being more comfortable with his progression and anticipating and letting it rip over the middle, because all quarterbacks are taught your mistakes are across the middle. Man, don't be late across the middle. Make sure you don't throw it high across the middle. Everything quarterbacks hear about the middle is don't do this, don't do that over the middle. And so, Malik was saying, yo, it's okay that that's the last piece of his development, because you want it to be his last piece of his development, because that shows you that he's valuing the football and he's making good decisions. And he said that is a great foundation for a young quarterback. So now he gets to see more defenses. He gets better pre-snap reads. He becomes more patient. And going back to the offensive line, the more he feels comfortable that he's going to get 4 or 5 seconds from the offensive line, now he's willing to allow things to develop and say, okay, I know this is coming across the middle. So just little things like that, that particular play you see something that you feel like, man, I wish he had hit Faison over the middle right there for about 12, 15 yards. But even in his decision making, you see it started with him going to the top instead of going immediately to the bottom. Because if he looks to the left, drops it to Jeremiah Love, it's probably an 8 to 10 yard gain. So that's that pre-snap read, like getting it pre-snap, seeing the numbers correctly, and then that helps when you making a better decision in that type of program. I mean, that type of situation. But that's just being a freshman or a redshirt freshman and a first-time starter. He'll learn. And like Mike Denbrock gave him one of the greatest compliments this week. Like, he's the type of kid that we feel like we can continue to put more on his plate, and we want him eventually to have a lot on his plate, because when your quarterback can have a lot on his plate, the offense goes as he goes, and we feel like he has a high ceiling. He's going to be a great player for us. So, I know you want to see it, Trev, because you want to see guys like Jaden Greathouse get off. It's not like Jaden Greathouse hasn't been open or the opportunities haven't been there. Jaden Greathouse, his catch was on that slot fade, right? That's the one catch I remember, to the outside. So the comfortability will come for CJ Carr to attack the middle of the field. I think it's going to be dangerous for other teams, because what are you going to do? Are you going to come up on Malachi Fields now to make sure you take the easy access throws away? Are you going to come up on Jordan Faison on the outside to make sure you take those throws away? Now you leave the deep post open. Now you leave other options open. And for me, Notre Dame's offense is a much better offense to be able to counter what defenses do, because of the multiple weapons that they do have. And I think we saw that in Purdue. Purdue went against their trend early on. They went against what they had shown on film early on, trying to confuse the young quarterback. I believe that's what they were trying to do. And Mike Denbrock pretty much was like, okay, if you guys do this, then we're just going to do that. And the greatest thing that I've seen from CJ Carr is his decision making. Outside of the one or two obvious plays that he's made every game, where you're like, okay, the interception against Texas A&M, the play I pointed out against Purdue, the eventual interception against Miami, you expect, but I expect those to disappear at some point as well, because he's going to end up maturing at the position. So I feel you on that, because you look at the film and you see opportunities. So I definitely understand why you feel like, man, we have to start attacking the middle of the field, intermediate, and even short, even if it's crossing routes, mesh routes, get it to our playmakers in space and let them do some things. But I think that's going to come. That's going to come.
Definitely the next step in his maturation process. I think that was very well said, Sean. And that leads into the final point that we need to see on offense. I think as this offense continues to evolve, you're going to get more weapons involved. I think that's going to happen organically, but we got to start to be able to see it. At the end of the day, as exciting as their performances has been, if Notre Dame wants to make a run to the playoffs and then make a run once they get into the playoffs, if they're able to make it there, you can't just rely on, all right, well, they have Love and Price and Malachi Fields. At some point, you're going to have to start getting more of your pieces involved. And yes, Jaden Greathouse is in that category. Absolutely. You have two absolute burners in KK Smith and Cam Williams just marinating on the sideline. At some point, you got to get them involved. You have talent in the tight end room. That needs to get more involved. Now, I think it would be extremely poetic if this was the game that Ty Washington starts to get involved a little bit in the pass game. I would personally like to see that. I think that'd be a great story. But you do have talent on your roster. And I think once to your point, CJ Carr's maturation kind of matches up and catches up to with what Mike Denbrock fully wants to do on offense, because I think he's done a good job so far this year. But I think once you get there, you're going to see more players get involved. You're going to see Will Pauling get more involved and Jaden Greathouse more involved. I mean, Micah Gilbert had a great start to the season, and then we just haven't seen him a whole lot since. You know, we watched Eli Raridan I mean, he's been great so far the first couple seasons. You start to add a second tight end into that mix. If they're able to have success pushing the ball down the field in 12 personnel, now you can sneak out 7 or sneak out 85 uncovered. It's that evolution of the offense that I'm excited to see. But I do think at some point you're going to need to get your pieces more involved. I do. And it's not just Fields, Greathouse, or it's not just Fields, Faison, Raritan, Love, and Price, because we said this going into the season, Sean. This is a very, very, very underrated pass catching group for Notre Dame. Now, to your point, you get Greathouse involved. You get a KK Smith or a Cam Williams involved. You get a Ty Washington and a Jack Larson involved. You're literally to the point where how do you defend this? I mean, Jeremiah Love right now, this is actually the first week, I believe, that he has an over-under in receiving yards set on FanDuel. But I think his over-under is set at, let me double-check this. Yeah, his receiving yards.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, his over-under right now is set at 23.5 receiving yards.
Uh-huh.
I think that's something that could be really taken advantage of on Saturday afternoon. Really taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the weaknesses of this Arkansas defense is the safeties. Well, the secondary as a whole. I won't just isolate the safeties, and then their best defensive back, he's probably injured for another 3 or 4 weeks, and he won't be out. He won't be back. So, and the linebackers, who, if you watched the game last week, they missed a ton of tackles against Memphis, which won't bode well with either running back. And they're not as athletic as some of the linebackers I think they've already faced during the schedule. So you could take advantage of them in the pass game, like you said. So I think the opportunities are there. I do see that his rushing yards have crept down. I think the over-under early in the week is 97.5. I checked it yesterday. It's down to 94.5.
Yeah, it started at 103.5. Yeah, I think on Monday or Tuesday, it started at 103.5, and then it moved down to 97.5. I didn't even check to see. I didn't know that it was down to 94.5.
Yeah, I think I saw it last night, Trev. You could double check. When I saw it last night, I thought it was down to 94.5, and I was like, wow. Like, are people like banging money on the Arkansas defensive line to stop them? But I think the defensive line, this is something else. John Neighbor said, they struggle when you have a running quarterback because they're a bigger line. They're not great laterally, so they do struggle with the run, which is funny that I think he was asked about it. It was funny that the conversation started this week with Mike Denbrock about packages for Kenny Minchie, going up against a defense that struggles to stop the rushing attack when the quarterback is part of the rushing attack. But no. I would, if I were a betting man, I would probably look at that prop bet on Jeremiah Love. I probably would look at both prop bets on Jeremiah Love and add them as a leg to a nice combo.
I know closer to game, the frustrating thing about betting on college is a lot of the prop bets that you have don't come out until game day. Like you can bet on receptions and players' total yards, like rushing and receiving for mobile quarterbacks. You can bet on passing plus rushing, but a lot of times those don't get available until game day, which is really frustrating. But no, I would look to bet on Jeremiah Love's over total yards in this one. Hint for anybody that does bet, because I think that he's gonna do some work in the run and pass game this week. That's for sure. Sean, let's switch gears here and talk about what we need to see, biggest fixes and adjustments from the Notre Dame defense. And I know that this is going to be a much more in-depth conversation than the offense. Offense, it's more adjustments. Hey, get this guy more involved. Hey, adjust this footwork. Hey, play with better technique here. On defense, I think there are just things you have to flat out fix. And no, it's not just fix who's calling the plays. And no, it's a fix who's at nickel corner. I think that conversation has kind of already been put to the wayside a little bit after seeing Dallas Golden out there. I do. But, there are some things that they need to fix overall. And I think it starts with fixing your coverage structure. How it's taught and how it's executed need to be completely changed. For reasons that I cannot fathom, receive it. And this is man or zone. This isn't a man versus zone. What's better? It doesn't matter what you run if it's being taught incorrectly. it might make fans feel better to see, hey, they're actually pressing up and going to run more man coverage. Doesn't matter if you don't get a hand on them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just a little different for zone. Why did Christian Gray get his first interception of the season? Because Madden Faramo rode out the running back, kept hands on him, played physical in coverage, and broke it up, allowing the ball to get floated into the air. That is teach tape for how underneath zone should go. But unfortunately, what we've seen predominantly, that's the anomaly, Sean. Because mostly what we've seen are just free runners. I actively watched Notre Dame's defense play keep away and not want to put hands on Mario Craver at any point during their game against Texas A&M. They treated him like he had leprosy. He didn't want to touch him. And that is something that just has to get adjusted. Because Marcus Freeman talks all the time about marrying the coverage to the front. Well, you can't do both. You can't have a passive pass rush and also have a passive secondary. You got to pick one to fix, one or the other. And where we're starting is with the defense, because at the end of the day, Sean, and I know these numbers are going to hurt to read out, Notre Dame had one of the best passing defenses in the country last year. They currently rank 132nd in the country in passing yards allowed per game, 109th in the country in yards per attempt, 130th in the country in yards per completion, 105th in the country in touchdowns allowed, 105th in the country in quarterback rating allowed, and 115th in sacks, 75th in completions of receptions of 30 yards or more. This unit has to change because I hate to break it to you, Taylon Green in this Arkansas offense is not the last offense you play this season that can push the ball down the field vertically. Go watch what NC State has been doing to people with C.J. Bailey. Go watch what Boston College has been doing with Dylan Lonergan and that receiving core. Go watch what USC has been doing with Jaden Maeva and Mekhi Lemon. I mean, it doesn't stop there. And so, Sean, first thing that you got to do is you got to fix this coverage structure.
We keep it real simple and fundamental. Zone is just a different version of man. And what I mean by that, Trev, is zone has man-to-man principles. This is why offenses come up with flood techniques to flood the zone to confuse the man-to-man principles to open up a lane for a pass and a reception. And so when you play zone, you cover the guy that threatens or enters your zone. That is a man-to-man principle. If you come here, you're my man. In my zone, I have to cover you. If you come through my zone, I should want to bump you or reroute you. So even though you're playing zone, you play it with man principles as well to say anybody that comes in here, I have to react to them, cover them, or reroute them and be physical with them as they go through my zone. And so that's something that you want to see. You don't want to see guys just playing like, oh, I'm responsible for this zone. It's almost like that. Like guys are just saying, oh, I'm responsible for this zone. And, if nothing is over here, then I don't have to do anything. No. Like your eyes should still be locked on either the closest person or locked on making sure you have leverage on the outside if the quarterback gets outside or if he scrambles outside. Now you start looking for guys running into your area because you anticipate that. Like if there's no receiver in my zone and the quarterback scrambles outside to my zone, more than likely the wide receivers are going to be coming with him. So now I have my eyes back to the left to say, if I'm on the right side, back to the left to say, all right, who's coming in that I have to pick up? And that's my guy, that's my man. So that's what I would like to see. Just that basic fundamental thing, like understanding that there are man principles even in zone, and this is just not everybody sitting back, not being physical, not identifying who their guy is that's threatening their zone or coming into their zone and being aggressive in playing that particular person. And so if I could see some aggression in the zone defense, that's something that will be encouraging to me because right now it's very passive zone, right? Because you can play quarters and literally it's like, it looks man. Pre-snap, it looks man. Post-snap, but really it's just quarters. And that can be confusing to a quarterback. It could lead to turnovers if you're playing it the right way. And that's what zones are designed to do. Played the right way, they want to cause confusion with the quarterback, which means what? He holds the ball a little bit longer, which allows your pass rush to get home and causes him maybe to scramble out or throw an errant pass. So these are the things that you're talking about, on the back end that need to be cleaned up. And if they can clean it up, like you said, that was zone that led to the interception with Christian Gray. But Madden Ferramo played that man like he had him man to man. He came into his area and he played the man. He played him with man principles, got the batted pass or got the tip deflection, leads to the interception by Christian Gray.
Oh, agreed. And I think that was explained really well, man. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I mean, you said it. I mean, Salty said it. I mean, he said zone or man, the coverage has to be more aggressive. Has to be. The overall defensive philosophy has to be more aggressive. Look, man, at the end of the day, coverage has to be better. But what else do they need to do? And Sean, we've already touched on it. You have to marry your front with your coverage. And if you are going to insist on playing this passive, don't want to touch anybody, keep away game in the back end of this defense, you got to get home to the quarterback. And Sean, you and I already talked about this a little bit, but one of the biggest fixes for Notre Dame's defense, you have to find a way to generate pressure on the quarterback. We've seen now in back-to-back games, really even in the third game, in the first game of the season as well, we've seen now in 3 games when Notre Dame is able to generate pressure, they make the opposing quarterback uncomfortable. It's not a mystery that once they started sending Kingston Viliamasa to pin his ears back, I would say pin his hair back, but he cut it. It looks different. I'm still, okay, sidebar, I still get confused finding Kingston on the field because he cut his hair. Because I was so used to seeing the long Troy Polamalu hair flowing out of the back of his helmet. But besides the point, sorry. It's not a secret that once they started triggering KVA to get after the quarterback, Marcel Reed started dirting the football. Looked visibly uncomfortable. Started to get sped up. You got almost zero pressure on Ryan Brown in the first half of the Purdue game. What happened? He passed for over 200 yards in one half. The Purdue quarterback passed for over 200 yards in the first half against his secondary. No disrespect to Ryan Brown, but this is a secondary consisting of top-level talent led by Mike Mickens. But that's why this defensive philosophy has to shift. But you need to be able to generate pressure on the quarterback. You absolutely have to. They ran, and I'm talking from top to bottom, I think the ends need to play with better technique. I think the interior of the defensive line needs let go. You need to start utilizing Donovan Heinisch in the correct ways. You need to be more creative with your blitz packages. I'm sorry. Sending Drake Bowen on a late linebacker fire to just slam his left shoulder into the center is not a blitz. It's not. You have to be creative with how you get after the quarterback. We broke down on the Upon Further Review. Notre Dame ran a brilliant blitz. They sent both linebackers. They slanted the entire defensive line left, I guess, right for the offense. They had both linebackers loop around, and Bryce Young won on the edge. It's a beautiful pressure design. But we need to see more of that, Sean. Like you talked about before, if Notre Dame isn't going to generate any pressure up front on the quarterback, it doesn't matter how good your coverage is, because at some point, somebody's going to come open. Defensive line, linebackers, they have to find a way to get home.
Can I use AI right now to like cut and paste and just drop in what I said when I misallocated what was supposed to be about the offensive line? Just take that whole 4 or 5 minutes, just put it right here. We're talking about creating pass rush.
I'll hit up Vince if he cuts up the show tonight. I'll just let him know, hey, cut that part out, put it in at about the 119 mark. We'll be ready to go. Yeah.
But no, you said it perfectly. What you saw first half, it's just really, it goes to this game. And Arkansas has been Arkansas all 4 games. And what I mean by that is they've been undisciplined. They commit penalties. They turn the ball over. They score a lot of points. They're really explosive offensively, and they're really good offensively when their quarterback is leading the way as their leading rusher. They're almost unstoppable, right? And they've done that all 4 games. Like literally, you know who they are. The only thing is who they are and who they've been is not good enough when they've stepped up in competition because they haven't been able to get away with the mistakes against Ole Miss and Memphis, who's the odds-on favorite to get that at-large bid out of the G5. So that's a pretty good team that they faced last week. And so what does that say? Well, Notre Dame in this matchup, Trev, is the unknown variable, in my opinion, because you don't know who Notre Dame is. I think we know who Arkansas is. We don't really know who Notre Dame is. It could be play to play, series to series, quarter to quarter, half to half. You could get good Notre Dame, and then all of a sudden, the second quarter, here comes bad Notre Dame. And then all of a sudden, here comes good defense in the third quarter. And then you get them into a big moment late in the game where you need a stop and they can't make the stop. So which Notre Dame team is going to show up for the majority of this game? And which Notre Dame pass rush is going to show up? Is it going to be the first half against Purdue or the more well-coordinated and executed second half pass rush from Purdue? Like, are they going to be aggressive? Jaden Alsbury kind of hinted at that the defensive game plan this week is to be aggressive. I think the quarterback they're facing and the offense they're facing is kind of forcing the deal, especially the way he likes to run the ball. You can't be passive with a running quarterback. You have to force the issue and take something. Take the dive from that RPO and then scrape across and let the linebackers get the outside run. Whatever you're going to do, you have to come downhill. So they're almost being forced this week to be aggressive and come downhill, particularly with their linebackers. But just sticking with that pass rush, they just have to be coordinated. Marcus Freeman talked about it. They've left a lot of room in the A and B gaps. Even when they've gotten pressure, it hasn't been coordinated with the interior rush, and they've left gaps for the quarterbacks, whether it's Marcel Reed or Brown, to step up, get yardage on plays, big play late in the game, fourth quarter. You know, they have a big second down, and they let Marcel Reed get up to the 11-yard line because Boubacar comes too far upfield and nobody's there underneath him, leaves a big gap. So the pass rush hasn't been coordinated as it needs to be, especially with the quarterbacks that we knew coming into the season they will be facing a better list of quarterbacks this year. And that gauntlet starts again. The 4 quarterbacks they're going to be facing moving forward, you're going to have to be able to coordinate a really solid pass rush where you're closing in from the ends, which Bryce Young was able to turn the corner. I have been begging for that since last week. Forget all of these spin moves and all of the different stuff. Get upfield, bend, get low, turn the corner, get to the quarterback, and then guys on the inside. Gabriel Rubio did a really good job when he got some one-on-ones, applying pressure, forcing Brown to get out of the pocket. And so if we can see more of that from him, if Donovan Hines can kind of be that guy to get upfield, get in between, and apply some pressure, coordinate it that way. Cole Mullins, Elijah Hughes, when they played together, you love the way they worked off one another and they applied pressure. So if they get opportunities, which with Jared Dawson coming back, I don't know if we're going to see Elijah Hughes as much as we saw last week, but I think he earned, if he gets some reps, he earned it last week. If Cole Mullins gets some reps, he earned it last week. So that's my take on the defensive line, Trav. I just really think you don't have. I think Al Washington is. I think there needs to be an adjustment, and it goes to your great point, Trev. If you're going to bring pressure, bring it from your strength, and your strength, pass rush wise, I think is on the edge with Bryce, with Boubacar. So play off of that. Teams are going to be doubling those guys, or the guard is going to be coming out to help on those guys. That's when you can bring an extra guy off the edge, right? Because those guys are occupied. And I think, just kind of doing that just to give a different look when you add pressure. And then, don't drop your defensive tackles into coverage. That's just not a good call. It's especially as a team that's a defense that's struggling to apply pressure. Why would you take one of your big guys out of the pass rush to put them in coverage? That's just not the right thing to do. It's just not.
Especially not when it's Donovan Heinisch, your most effective interior pass rusher.
Man.
It's almost like that'd be as crazy as sending Leonard Moore on a corner fire. Oh, wait, we saw that too. But I digress. That was kind of petty. But continuously put your players in position to win. But I agree with everything that you said about the pass rush. That also you also mentioned the linebackers. And I think that's a good follow-up into the final point of what this defense needs to do, man. You got to let those linebackers loose. Got to let them eat. You have an entire room coached by Max Bull of guys who are good-sized linebackers. They're rangy. They're fast. They attack downhill. And you're asking them to spy. You're asking them to drop and play hook curl. That's not where Kingston Viliamasa thrives. It's not. You're asking Drake Bowen to cover wheel routes into the end zone. That's not where they thrive. They thrive flying downhill, getting after the quarterback, blowing up run plays, and causing chaos. You need to let them go be who they are. To your point, Sean, if you can't generate pressure up the middle, trigger some of your linebackers to go. Don't drop Kingston into coverage or use him as a spy. Put him on the edge because he might have the most natural bend as a pass rusher on the entire roster. Use him. Use him in that way. I mean, it almost feels like you hear the linebackers talk. You see how they're playing. They're almost foaming at the mouth to be let go and to fly downhill. I mean, they're begging to be let off the leash. And this is the perfect game to do it. I mean, think about this, Sean. We talked about this earlier in the week. Why did Notre Dame have so much success against USC in 2023? Because they attacked. They flew downhill. They were triggering their linebackers. I'm sure that Caleb Williams is still having nightmares about Maris Leofau. I'm sure about it. But then what was the difference between 23 and then 22 and 24? They played back. They played passive. They didn't want to get beat. They didn't want to get beat deep. So then what happened? They got beat deep. So it's almost like that passive-aggressive or that passive defense is causing you to give up the big plays. Let your linebackers off the leash. Let them go. Now, I think that's going to be one of the biggest fixes that nobody's talked about because, Sean, me, you, Brian, we were extremely high on this linebacking unit coming into the season. And I still am. It's not that they aren't as good as we thought. It's not like, I guess Kingston just forgot how to play football this year, guys. Sorry. It's not, I guess Drake Bowen just wasn't who we thought, even though he started, played, and finished all 16 games at middle linebacker last year. We were just wrong on him. Yeah, Jaden Osbury was one of your best open field tacklers last year. He just kind of forgot. Nah, man, they're not being let off the leash. They need to let go to be played free. Fast, free, aggressive, violent football is exactly what these linebackers need to get back to. If Chris Ash and Max Bulla and Marcus Freeman, everybody on that defensive coaching staff, allows these linebackers to play free, Sean, that is going to be a huge indication that they are taking a step in the right direction. A huge step. And I think it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now.
It's funny you mentioned that because I think we got a peek into some of the things that are happening. And, when you hear Marcus Freeman talk about buy-in, well, let's be honest. When you bring in somebody new, there's always going to be a season or a valley or wilderness where you have to get people to buy in, to take them to the promised land, per se. Like you have to convince them to buy in because they're familiar with where they just came from, and you're trying to take them somewhere else, and you're stuck in this place, and the way that you introduce things to them is going to have a heavy influence on whether or not they receive it properly and start to believe in it. And so I don't think the best way to introduce everything that you wanted all at one time, it seems like with the tough first two games you had, you should have been much more simple. Even if you were trying to change things, what you gave going into those first two matchups should have been so simple and all about how to stop the other teams rather than let's do all of this different stuff that I want to implement. That's something that you try to do over the course of the season. Like, have a plan. First quarter, we want to be really good at this. Going in the second quarter, we'll add this to the plate. Third quarter, we should be really proficient. Now we can really start doing deep dives into some things where we're disguising things and causing havoc. And you just don't put everything on the plate and have these kids that are so used to playing off the leash, like you said, mentally playing with a leash because they're thinking rather than just going out and using their God-given talent to make plays. That's what they have, the ability to make plays, and they're being put on a leash or bound or kept away from doing that consistently because they're out there trying to figure out all of this new information and new plan that they've been given, right? Just look at them at pre-snap. Because Notre Dame did pre-snap movement last year under Al Golden, but it didn't seem as frantic as it seems now. Like, the secondary seems frantic. The defensive line seems frantic with the moves they're making pre-snap. And everything, it just seems out of whack. So, yeah, for me, the linebackers, I felt like we're going to be the least of our worries. I was like, oh, the linebackers are going to be the least of our worries. I'm not worried about the linebackers. Like Max Bullock, he has his group ready. And then all of a sudden, you're like, man, what is going on? Why are they being so laid back and passive? And you know what's strange? You go back and watch the spring game. They brought the linebackers off the edge a lot in that spring game. And now you're like, okay, where is this at? So it's just interesting what we've seen. And it's almost like, once again, play from your strength.
Yep.
You're not playing from your strength. You're just doing things. You're not playing from the strength of who you are, what you have, who your best players are, what they can do, and how others can be better by playing off of them. Those are the things that you're responsible for as a coaching staff, right? To get everybody in a place to where they can do the best thing that makes them the best player. Don't ask Donovan Heinrich to go up against double teams and hold a gap consistently. Why are you putting him in that position?
And
Like,
don't overcorrect and then ask him to drop into coverage.
yes.
Maybe you take your most athletic, one of your most athletic, and twitch your interior defensive pass rushes and send him on the long stunts. Maybe. Find the in-between of asking him to hold the A gap against 6'6", 350-pound Inez Cooper and having him drop back and play hook to curl zone.
I'm just looking for some basics. You know, the offensive line for Arkansas got beat by the same blitz 3 times last week in key situations because they're not good on third downs. Defensively, shall I speak. They are proficient on third downs offensively, but they got beat by the same blitz by the middle linebacker where he faked like he was dropping in his own coverage and then came on the blitz, and they never picked it up. So Memphis kept doing it. They kept doing it in key situations. And either the pressure caused an incompletion and it ended up in a sack one of the times. And I'm like, okay. Other teams can do it. I don't know why we can't do it. I would love to even just see a cross dog. Let the linebackers cross each other. Just let them bring some confusion instead of them just running straight ahead. Like, just.
I'd love to see a nickel fire.
Oh,
maybe.
Hey, that's one of my favorite plays on Madden and college.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love that nickel fire.
I would love to see that. It's almost like we saw it a couple times in the off season, and it was really effective. But maybe that'll come back. Maybe that'll come back around. But look, Sean, at the end of the day, hopefully we're sitting here in about 25 hours, and we're talking about some of these adjustments that we saw. I'm hoping, because if we do, this game is meant to lay the groundwork for when they face Boise State, for when they face NC State, USC, Boston College, Pitt, Navy, ideally. Because look, at the end of the day, folks, the defense isn't going to look completely different and look like 2024 on Saturday. It won't. But if they start taking the necessary steps in the right direction, it's going to give us a lot of positives to talk about. And it's going to lead to that turnaround. But that's going to do it for us on part 2 of today's show here. But don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk college football topics. There's a lot of awesome games happening around college football this weekend. Sean and I are going to talk about what teams have the most to prove, what teams have the most at stake. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure that you hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Sean, part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. We are going to break down this weekend of college football, and there is a lot at stake for a lot of these teams playing really, really good games this weekend, Sean. Really good games. I mean, you got Ohio State on the road at Washington, LSU's on the road against Ole Miss. You know, all these conferences are starting to get into the bulk of their conference play. Alabama's on the road against Georgia. Oregon's on the road against Penn State. There's a lot of good games this weekend. And with that, this has been a crazy start to the year. And there's going to be some teams that have a little bit to prove. And then there's going to be some teams that have quite a bit at stake. And that's why I love college football. You know, in the NFL, you can I watched the Cincinnati Bengals do it a couple years ago. You can start the season 1-3, but still make the playoffs and make a run. In college football, the margin for error is really, really small when you start talking about big picture. And so there's a lot of teams that are already going into their 4th, 5th games of the season that have a lot at stake. But Sean, to get this conversation started, I figured, you know, you give a team, I'll give a team, we'll kind of go back and forth. But when you look at this overall slate for this weekend, what team would you say has a lot to prove? What teams would you say are kind of at the top of your list?
I'll start with the low-hanging fruit on this one, Trev. You know, teams like, you know, we talked about it, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU. But for me, I think there is a game that is very dangerous. I think what Ohio State is walking into in Husky Stadium, that stadium can be a very loud stadium for a young first-time quarterback in his true first road test. This is his true first road test, right? And their running game is not something that can like settle things down, because the running game has not been as good or as efficient as it was last year. But their defense will travel. Their defense will travel. So I'm going to be very interested in how I think this game is going to show me a lot about who this Ohio State team is character-wise. Like we get to see it, because this is a game where it's like, okay, you struggled running the ball, but can you go out there, exert your physicality, kind of like you did against Texas at home with the home energy that you had? Can you do it on the road, right? Because we know you had the dudes on the perimeter to make some big plays in the game. That's without question. Washington's going to try to be physical. They're going to try to get the home crowd into it. And, you know, can you I would be really impressed if they won by more than a touchdown. That would prove a lot to me. It really would. Because we know the big one that's taking place up in Happy Valley. That's low-hanging fruit. Because both teams have something to prove in that matchup. Penn State definitely has something to prove. And then Oregon has something to prove with their new quarterback. So Ohio State, to me, has a lot to prove. And that's even with saying, like, even with them beating Texas, I still feel like, okay, because Texas, to me, still hasn't proven that they can be physical and win a physical game. Like those matchups, we haven't seen Texas really win one, right? And those roadblocks have been what? Georgia, Ohio State, haven't gotten over the hump. And so for me, Ohio State, I like this test for them. Like, I like taking a test at a certain time. Ryan Day should love this game for his team because this is a great litmus test for where his team really is, right? Game one, they were up for that at home against Texas. He didn't have to get them fired up for that game, right? And offensively, they didn't really play too well against Texas. They played a great defensive game and made some plays to win it in the end. But this will show him his total team, who they are, because I think it's going to take a total effort in all three phases for them to go out there to Husky Stadium and get a win. So I think that's a dangerous game to me. I don't know if a lot of other people see it as a possible dangerous game. That Washington game, especially with DeMond Williams and what he can do and what that Husky offense can provide against them, I'm not going to go as far as saying they're my dog of the week, but it bears watching.
Look, man, at the end of the day, I'm with you completely. Dude, Washington hasn't lost at home since November of 2021. That's crazy. It is. I like this weekend slate of games, Sean, because now a lot of the dust has settled from the week one. We're going to talk about LSU here in a little bit. It's like, they beat Clemson on the road at Clemson. It's like, yeah, how impressive is that win now? Week one, still kind of. But last week, I just watched Syracuse go into Death Valley and absolutely whoop Clemson. So it's kind of like you start to see it come to light a little bit. I would stake the claim that I think Washington is the best offense that Ohio State's going to face up to this point in the season. We've seen Texas struggle on offense. I'm going to be very curious to see how this Ohio State defense can generate pressure on them, because if there's one thing that Texas did relatively well in that game against Ohio State, they kept Arch Manning's jersey clean. Ohio State wasn't able to get home on the edge like they did last season with JTT and Jack Sawyer. Now, first game of the season. So I'm well aware of the fact that they absolutely could have improved. But what's the gauge? Because they got home against Grambling in Ohio? This is going to be a good test for either team. For Ohio State, this comes down to one thing that's simple. And I've been saying this since the summer. If they're able to run the football, then I love Ohio State's chances in this game. Because when has Ohio State been the best, Sean? When they've been able to run the football. In my lifetime of being a college football fan, I've never been worried about Ohio State's ability to pass a football. Ever. But when have they been the most successful? They won a national championship in 2014. Who'd they have? Zeke Elliott. They played one of the most competitive college football playoff semifinal games I've ever seen in 2019 against Clemson. What'd they have that year? J.K. Dobbins, a 2,000-yard rusher. They won the national championship last season. What'd they have? 2 1,000-yard rushers. Their ability to run the football really helps them in away games. I think Kyle McCord in 2023 gets too much blame for some of the struggles they've had on offense. I think people forget that their running back room was Chip Trainum and Mayan Williams. I've never been concerned about Ohio State. Are they going to have good enough pass catchers? Yeah. They've had good enough pass catchers for the last 20 years. They'll be fine.
You're shortchanging them. It's for the last 30.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're going back to like Chris Carter and some guys, David Boston. They had some guys. Fair. Yeah, it's almost 30 plus years.
No, that's fair. I think I would have been remiss if I would have said 30 years. I'm 28, so I don't want to start pulling up stuff that I can't speak on. You know what I'm saying? So
I got you. Trev. I got you back.
25 years. Now, I'd also be lying if I said I was watching Ohio State football when I was 3 years old. But I've never been concerned about their pass catchers. If they're able to run the football, I think they win this game relatively convincingly. But don't underestimate this Washington team. I'm with you completely. I think they have a lot to prove because Texas has also not panned out like the team that we thought that they were going to. Shoot, man, going into the season, we didn't think that Texas was the best team in the country, but they were the number one ranked team. Would anybody try to argue that they now look like the number one team in the country? I wouldn't. I wouldn't at all. Now, they're going to get better as the season goes on. But so far through the first quarter of the season, I wouldn't say that they've looked like the number one team in the country. So that's where I'm at. Sean, the next team that I think that has a lot to prove, I have Georgia on this list. For a couple different reasons. One, you're coming off of a big win on the road against Tennessee in a game that was a shootout, which I didn't actually think it was going to be a shootout. I thought Georgia was going to win, but I didn't think the final score was going to be 44-41. Definitely didn't think that was going to be the outcome. But I have Georgia with a lot to prove here for a couple of different reasons. One, can Kirby Smart finally get over the Alabama hump? Last season, we thought that was going to be the year. I know they played down in Tuscaloosa, but it's like, hey, first-year quarterback or first-year head coach and Kalen DeBoer. He's going from Washington to the SEC. Kirby has, Carson Beck, and on defense, you have Nazir Stackhouse and C.J. Allen and Jalen Walker and Malachi Starks and all these household names, and they still couldn't get it done. Well, now what's the excuse? You're playing at home. You're in Athens. Alabama didn't look great on the road in their first road test of the season. You know what I'm saying? So what's going to be the excuse now if Kirby can't overcome this? We can get into the conversation if they're still the team to beat in the SEC and they won the conference last year despite it being a down year. Down year for them was 11-3, winning the conference and getting a bid in the playoffs and a bye. But I think Georgia has a lot to prove in this game, because their defense has not looked good so far this season. And offensively, dude, Gunnar Stockton was kind of dealing against Tennessee. He made some throws in that game, man, that were really, really impressive. But I think Georgia has a lot to prove to show that, hey, we're still here. We can loot. I think that their reputation of being able to reload every single year is kind of at stake in this game. That's why I think that they have something to prove. Because every year, I think you talked about it last time we did RTCF. And, every year we talk about this Georgia roster isn't as good as the last one. And can Kirby be able to repeat? And then who wins the SEC? Who's making the playoff? Who goes undefeated in the regular season? It's Georgia. And so I think that's what they have to prove. And we'll talk about Alabama here in a little bit, but I think Georgia has quite a bit to prove in this one, Sean. What do you think?
Georgia to the SEC is Ohio State to the Big Ten. They just have that thorn in their side. Ohio State's is Michigan. Alabama is Georgia's. But they keep winning the Big Ten, or they keep getting to the Big Ten championship, or they're the best team, some would say, over the last 5 years. So very similar to what we talked about. So this would say a lot about the character of what Kirby Smart really has. Like you said, a huge win. Some people might say Tennessee gave the game away. That's fine and dandy. A win is a win. What I'll say to this game is it's a hump for them to get over Georgia. But did you see how the Alabama defense handled a running quarterback that's used in the run game? Did you see that?
Sure did.
On the road? Stetson Bennett's going to have a chance to have a good day. For me, that's what I see. Last year, Alabama had to jump out to a big lead and almost lost it.
At home.
Yeah. So as bad of a half as they played last year, Georgia still was right there and threw a late interception to not win. So I understand your premise. I just don't think Bama has the horses, especially with the sustained injuries they've taken on defense.
Yep, I get you.
In the front seven. Yeah. I like Gunnar Stockton, man. I really do. I was forced to not like him when they played Notre Dame, but I like the kid, man.
Well,
I like him.
He's the type of quarterback that Kirby Smart has had success with over the years.
Yeah.
He's more of the Jake Fromm, Stetson Bennett than he is Carson Beck. That's for sure. I think Kirby Smart kind of needs that gamer type of quarterback. So I agree with you completely, Sean. Who else do you think has a lot to prove on this weekend's college football slate?
Well, Penn State, without question. jokingly, sometimes you get fans from other schools that come on and troll on your show. And we had this Penn State fan trolling on the show all week. And I finally got tired of it. And I just told him, like, dude, your quarterback has been the weak link for 3 straight years. At some point, when is he going to become the strength? The way Dante Moore is playing, this is a game where Drew Allen cannot be the weakest link. He cannot be. He can't. I'm not sitting here saying it's going to be a high-scoring game. It's going to be a low-scoring game. Drew Allen is going to have to make some plays. And there's no excuses for him as a veteran, long-time veteran. The NFL scouts are saying, oh, he's a first-round pick. All right, go out and prove it against a good team. Go prove it. They went out and got you our receivers in the transfer portal. So you can't use that as an excuse anymore. My guys can't get separation. They can't get open. All right, it's time for you to go prove it. You definitely can't blame the running game. You can't blame the offensive line. You don't have any more excuses. Literally, the curtain is up. It's time for you to perform. You know what I'm saying? This is the Apollo of college football on Saturday night, buddy. Either you're going to get booed off or you're going to get a standing ovation. It's one or the other. It's time to put up or shut up. There is no more Bo Prabula. You don't have to worry about him. You don't have to put Tyler Warren back there and Wildcat. It's all you, bro. It's all you. So I think he, in particular, a player, has a lot to prove to me in this matchup. A lot to prove. If he comes out and has a game, it will say a lot. Because I think when you're at where Penn State is at, can they beat Ohio State? Can they beat Oregon? I still don't think beating Oregon at home would answer the Ohio State question. Still doesn't answer it for me. Still doesn't answer, can they get over the Michigan hump? Still doesn't answer any of those. Because Oregon, we've seen them fold. We saw them fold against Ohio State in the playoffs. They played a great game, Penn State that is, against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. It's a rematch, right? Their physicality, they kept coming back at Oregon when Oregon would get distance between them. And so I'm just really interested in seeing this matchup and what type of game it ends up being. It was a high-scoring affair in the Big Ten championship. I don't foresee that many points this year. And if I had to pick, I would pick Penn State at home. I would pick Penn State at home. However, man, I think both teams have a lot to prove. I think Dan Lanning has a lot to prove. Like, hey, has this program hit a ceiling under you where you're just going to recruit, spend a lot of money, talk a lot of trash, and when you go up against the big boys, you get folded like a folding chair? Because that's basically what's happened. Like your regular season, then you go up against teams that are physical and impose their physicality on you, and all your speed that you build your program around just wilts under the pressure. So 2 teams facing off, talented, good teams, and neither one of them have really played anybody. So this is both of their first times like having actual resistance on the other side. I'm interested in seeing how you think, what you think about this game straight up, and then what you think about the spread, because the spread was shocking to me.
I was just about to say that, man. I was really surprised at where it was at for this one. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I understand like everybody buys into the Penn State whiteout, home atmosphere. I understand it. But, when you go back and you look on FanDuel, Penn State right now is favored by 3.5 points, which actually it's moved down a little bit. Last time I looked at it, they were favored, I think, by 4.5 yesterday. Might have been. But I was pretty surprised at what that number was. I thought this was going to be a pick'em game. I thought it was going to be like a 1.5 spread type deal, where it's just like, okay, Penn State's kind of getting the bump because they're the home team, but we don't really know how this is going to go. But I agree with you. I would make the argument that I think Penn State, out of all the teams that we're going to talk about today, has the most to prove this weekend. Because it's now or never. You start to have the conversation around James Franklin of, okay, if you can't get that big win when the Big Ten as a conference is at the state that they're in, and you bring back the most experience on your roster in the Big Ten, and you still can't win the big game, when is it going to happen? That's not to discredit Ohio State or Oregon, because their rosters are fantastic. They're just young in certain areas. The national championship winner has been from the Big Ten the last 2 seasons. Why? Because they convinced a lot of their impact players to come back and stay for one more year. Michigan did it in 23. Ohio State did it in 24, along with some impact transfer portal players. So what did Penn State do this offseason? They convinced a lot of their homegrown impact players to return. Deni Dennis Sutton comes back. Zane Durant comes back. Your 2 running backs come back. But you needed some portal help. So what'd you do? You went out and rebuilt your receiving corps. If not now for Penn State, it isn't going to be when Julian Sain's a year older. It's not going to be when you go up against junior year Jeremiah Smith. It's not going to be when you go up against 2026 version of Dante Moore. So if not now, then when? And I think that's absolutely at stake for Penn State on this one. I think you can fit them in both categories. Most to prove and the most at stake. Because if Penn State can't get it done this season with the experience that they have, I just don't know when it does under this regime. Now, they're never going to let go of James Franklin because the dude's going to get 10 wins every year. And so it's just like, okay, like, what do you kind of prefer? Postseason success, or you're just going to be bowl eligible, 10, 11 win team every single year? I don't know the question to that. But Penn State has a lot to prove. Can they finally win the big game? And shortly put, it's just now or never for James Franklin. The other thing that you have to prove is you spent all offseason whining about how you have to play 9 conference games, and that's why you're playing FIU, Nevada, and Villanova. So you could be more well-rested for this big game. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you come out and get absolutely bullied by a team by Oregon who's not a physical football team, what are we talking about here? Penn State has a lot on the table. Like I said, I would make the argument that I think out of all the teams that we're going to talk about today, Sean, I think Penn State has the most to prove out of all of them, and it's kind of by a lot.
And I'm going to love watching Decorian Moore against AJ Harris. I'm going to love watching that all night long, like Lionel Richie, all night long. Please don't fail me, quarterback. Please don't fail me, Dante Moore. Give me something to watch. I want to see both guys win reps. What's that? I don't know if you have it in front of you. What's that prop on Drew Aller in this
Drew
game?
Aller, yeah, I got you, man.
What is it right at about 190 something, 200?
For passing yards?
Yeah.
Drew Aller's over-under passing yards is set at 215.5.
Really?
Passing touchdowns, his over-under is set at 1.5, but it's plus odds. It's plus 102 for him to throw 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
Dante Moore's over-under is 222.5 passing yards. And then your guy, Decorian Moore, his over-under is set at 48.5.
That's it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, see, in a game like this, when the buzz is all about the running backs on the Penn State side, what's the value of the rushing yards for the Oregon running backs? Because the over-under on them will probably be pretty low.
Well, right now, and this is one of the things that kind of frustrates me, is I wish FanDuel would come out with these player props a little bit sooner than game time. You can't even bet on an Oregon running back right now.
Wow. Because that would be a good value bet. Because I'm sure it's going to be pretty low.
Oh, I
if it was that. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guarantee. Sean, another team that I think has a lot to prove this weekend, switching gears a little bit here, I think it's Texas A&M. I do. And here's why. They're off to their first 3-0 start since 2021.
Yeah.
You beat Notre Dame at home. And similar to the Georgia-Tennessee conversation, it's, okay, did Texas A&M beat Notre Dame or did Notre Dame give that game away? Who beat who? And now Texas A&M made the plays down the stretch that they needed to, but at the end of the day, they had a punt block for a touchdown. Marcel Reed completed under 50% of his passes. 207 of your, actually 240 of your 500 total yards of offense came on 6 plays, which is still gross to say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those where I think Texas A&M kind of has a lot on their plate. You get into conference play. You host Auburn, a team that is dangerous and can hurt you. I watched C.J. Carr throw for 293 passing yards against this defense, and they didn't have Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. Man. Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison aren't scrubs by any means. But how are you going to defend that? I think there's more holes in this Texas A&M defense. So, Sean, they have a lot to prove to me in terms of, okay, are you legitimate contenders? Or were you able to beat up on a team that was still looking for their identity on defense like Notre Dame? Who is Texas A&M? And I think that's going to be really interesting.
I think you're going to find out. Well, see, you talk about Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. They're limited because they have a guy named Jackson Arnold at quarterback. They should be far more explosive and dangerous and productive as a tandem. They just happen to have a mid quarterback. Let me tell you something. Last week, I was really impressed watching that game because I had watched Oklahoma physically outplay Michigan, who was a physical team. I mean, Michigan just literally went up to Nebraska and just pushed Nebraska around in the run game last week. And so when I saw the way Oklahoma might have the best defensive line in college football, just flat out. They shut down the run, they get after the quarterback, and they go too deep across the board. So Auburn was just as physical with them. And a lot of people feel like the refs took that game from Auburn. You had the questionable call where they ran somebody, acted like they were running somebody off the field, and he hit and ended up catching a touchdown. Then you had a non-call penalty on Cam Coleman's pass that should have been pass interference and put them inside the 5. All of those different things, man. Auburn really played toe-to-toe with Oklahoma on the road. And I think they're going to do the same thing with Texas A&M. It might come down to who's better, Jackson Arnold or Marcel Reed late in that game, right? Because you have wide receivers on both sides that can make impact plays. Auburn's running game, to me, is going to be very important if they can get going. You saw what they did to Baylor. This is another thing. Auburn has been tested early in the season on the road at Baylor. They come away with that win. They feel like they should have come away with the win on the road at Oklahoma. And so, of course, Texas A&M, they came and got a win at Notre Dame. So you're going to get a good one. 2 teams that have been tested early on the road, 2 teams up front that are physical. I really don't trust Jackson Arnold, Trev. I don't, man. I don't. I watched that game and he missed. Cam Coleman was so open. He ran a double move. All he had to do was just underhand the ball to him. He literally, and just overthrow. And I'm like, yeah, Cam Coleman's numbers probably aren't going to be as good as they should be.
Agreed.
Right. And I'm not on Deuce Night watch or anything like that. But, man, I see why Oklahoma went and got John Mateer. I'll leave it at that. It was evident last week.
Yeah, you ain't lying. I get that. To put some numbers behind what you're talking about, Sean, about Oklahoma's D-line, did you see the PFF numbers for how they ended their game against Auburn? They had against an SEC offensive line. Had 27 total pressures, 11 hits plus sacks on the quarterback. Bro, they finished the game with 10 sacks. 10. Bro. Those numbers are crazy. Those numbers are absolutely crazy. Last team that I'm going to talk about, teams with something to prove, we'll switch gears over to most at stake. But the last team for me is LSU, Sean, and I'll tell you why. like I said, now that the dust is starting to settle from week 1, that win on the road against Clemson isn't really looking like what it did when it happened. It isn't. One of the worst things to happen to LSU this season is Clemson just kind of took a nosedive. And since then, you beat Louisiana Tech by 16. You beat Florida at home by 10. And yeah, holding a Florida offense to 10 points is impressive. The LSU defense this year has been the side of the ball that's really impressed me. Their offense has let me down. You score 20 points offensively when the opposing quarterback throws 5 interceptions. That's not going to get it done, especially when you're gearing up to play Ole Miss on the road, a team that puts up points like crazy. You kind of had to turn around against Southeast Louisiana. You put up 56 points, but again, I don't put too much weight into that. So who is this LSU offense? Are they going to be able to hang in a game with Ole Miss? I think they have a lot to prove this weekend. They're going up against a struggling Ole Miss defense. For as good as the Rebels' offense has been, their defense just wasn't what it was last year. So if you can't put up points against this defense, it's not going to get much easier for you when you play Vanderbilt on the road, A&M at home, Alabama on the road, and Oklahoma on the road. They end their season against Oklahoma on the road. That game looks a lot more difficult than what it was going into the season, Sean. This offense is going to have to find a way to turn it around. So LSU, I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but LSU has something to prove to me this weekend too.
This is a tough one. This is a tough one for LSU, right? Their defense is good enough to stymie the Ole Miss offense at certain points. Whether it's Austin Simmons or Trinidad at quarterback, Chambliss, Ole Miss can score points. They can score points. Now the question is whether or not they're going to be able to first one to 20. I'll say first one to 27. I feel like LSU needs to score 27 points in this game or more to win it, because I feel comfortably that Ole Miss can get up to 24, 27 points in this matchup. I think the defense is going to be able to hold them down into the 20s, but can LSU score upwards of 24 to 27 points to get the victory? Their offensive line has just kind of failed them. But we knew that was going to be a struggle for them with everything that they lost last year. We knew the offensive line was going to struggle. And like you said, they struggled in the first half against Clemson, got things together, made some plays in the second half. And now watching Clemson struggle against Troy, lose to Georgia Tech, lose at home to Syracuse, even with Steve Angeli going down in the third quarter. Now that win is like, okay, you didn't beat the Clemson team, of the past. You beat a new Clemson team that's not as good.
I mean, to your point, Sean, that went from you beat LSU on the road to how did you only beat that team by 7? I mean, because of Clemson's downfall, that's what that turned into. It went from, top 5 Clemson team on the road to open up the season. This might be the year for LSU. That slowly turned into, I watched this Syracuse offense absolutely eat this defense alive. What were you doing? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a great point, Sean. Sorry to cut you off. But yeah, man, LSU is in a really interesting spot going into this weekend. We're also going to find out if they finally learn how to defend a mobile quarterback. Because Trinidad Chambliss, which, by the way, is a dope name for a quarterback, by the way. It's not a cool name for a quarterback? Trevor Trowbridge. Trinidad Chambliss is a name that strikes fear into people when they're playing.
No, T-squared is dope.
T-squared I'll take.
T-squared is dope.
Unfortunately, that wasn't on the scouting reports, bro. It was like Trowbridge. I was like, all right. But you see Trinidad Chambliss on the scouting report, man. Hey, that's going to strike some fear. But he's a quarterback that's rushed for $150 in his last 2 games combined. We're going to find out if LSU has really figured out how, because it's not going to get easier for him on their schedule. They have to face South Carolina, who has a mobile quarterback. They face Diego Pavia. They're going to face Marcel Reed. They're going to face Taylon Green. And then they end the year on the road facing John Mateer. So we're going to get that question answered if they finally figured out how to defend a mobile quarterback. And I'm going to be really interested to see if they can.
And that cat Diego Papi is talking cash money. He is the man. He is talking cash money. He was talking during the summer at the SEC Media Day. He's talking before games. Diego is talking cash money like we're coming. Vanderbilt is coming. And shout out to Clark Lee. Oh, just a little stat. Steve Angeli threw for more yardage than Garrett Nussmeier against Clemson, and he didn't even play a quarter and a half. He did that in 2.5 quarters. That's crazy. That's a crazy stat. Passing more yards than Garrett Nussmeier did the entire game in 2.5 quarters.
We talked last night on the spread option, and we rarely ever say to take unders. I'm weird with betting with unders because it kind of feels like you're rooting for somebody to do bad. But Garrett Nussmeier's over-under for the game was at like 286.5, and he has yet to get over 275 this season. He passed for 273 against Southeast Louisiana. And now he's going to go out against Ole Miss on the road and pass for almost 290 yards. So I said one of my player props that I talked about from that game is taking his under. I just don't see it because of the offensive line. It's not that they lack skill talent. I've watched Garrett Nussmeier throw for 300-400 yards in a game. But it's that offensive line, man. I'm with you. Sean, let's switch gears a little bit to wrap up this segment and talk about teams with the most at stake. And I know these are kind of similar conversations, but most to prove is kind of like, okay, like you have to go out and show me something. The most at stake is, hey, if you lose, this might be rough. And the first team is Notre Dame. And I hate that we have to have this conversation. But look, I hope that this isn't being preached to the players. I hope that this isn't the conversations amongst the coaching staff, but we can have this conversation, Sean. If Notre Dame loses on Saturday, that's kind of it. That's what's at stake. You already have 2 losses, and you don't play in a conference to then try to backdoor your way into playing in a conference championship and then sneak into the playoffs. If you pick up your 3rd loss, that's it for the season. And all that talent on your roster, that's what's at stake for Notre Dame. I think that's huge, Sean, and I think that's where we have to start when we talk about teams with the most at stake this weekend.
I would put them on their own list for the next 10 games.
Man.
Most at stake in college football, Notre Dame.
Man.
On their own list for the rest of the year. Like, without question. And they can't avoid it. They know. Missed opportunities. We missed opportunities that if we had won those first 2 games, we had cushion. We were playing with, okay, if we lose a game, we beat 2 ranked teams to start the season. They lost that opportunity. They loved that cushion. Now they have no margin for error. No room. None. And so they know that. They don't talk about it. But you don't have to talk about things that you know. Like when Trev stepped on the football field, he knew he was the best dude on the field, ladies and gentlemen. He knew. I'm the dude. I'm the best quarterback on the field. And so Notre Dame knows. They know they're the best team on the field every week moving forward. And they know they can't afford not to play like it moving forward. Because they lose everything. They know that. The same players that came back or didn't transfer when they could have for this opportunity to have 2 consecutive years in the playoffs and they run to the national championship, all that fades away. All of it goes away if you don't bring it. So you might not talk about it. That's not how you want to prepare a team, but you know what's at stake. So definitely Notre Dame is at the top of this list. Their own list, in my opinion.
Agreed completely. Sidebar, Karen made it in. Happy game day eve. That's what I needed to see. That's good juju right there. Karen, we appreciate you as always. But Sean, I agree with you completely. I do. And it's one of those where it's now or never time for Notre Dame too. Next team on this list is the Alabama Crimson Tide. And this is a little bit different of a conversation than for Notre Dame because, look, at the end of the day, they're just starting conference play. If they lose to Georgia, is their season over? No, it's not. It isn't. I mean, we watched a 3-loss Clemson team make the playoffs last year because they won their conference. So the season isn't over for Alabama, but here's what I think is at stake for them. I watched the team get jumped on against Florida State, and half of the roster looked like they didn't even want to be there. I saw the look in Ty Simpson's eye. Like, you know when a quarterback kind of gives you that look, Sean? Brian talks about it all the time, when you can just see it in their eyes that they don't have it. Like, I've had that look before. I went in a game my sophomore year, and it was like varsity. And like, you get it when you're in high school. It's like, like when you're an underclassman stepping on the field in varsity, it's kind of like, all right, this is like big boy football. You're not playing JV. You're not playing freshman anymore. And like, I had that look like that. Oh, okay. So these dudes aren't like 5'6", 180 pounds. Like, these dudes are like 6'5". These dudes are 6'3". You know what I mean? Ty Simpson had that look against Florida State. Lost. Confused at times. The moment overwhelmed him. I don't know if the moment for him is going to get much bigger than Athens, Georgia at nighttime. And I think that you run the risk of if you get jumped on in this game, that look comes back. And with an already banged up roster, I start to question the buy-in. I honestly don't put too much weight into what they did in the last couple games. Yeah, you beat Louisiana Monroe by 70. I'd hope so. You got embarrassed in week 1. You beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin's horrid. They're not good this season. And so I think Alabama runs the risk of, if they get jumped on by Georgia and they play a not close game. I think if they play a close game and battle against a number 5 team in the country, there's going to be a lot to build on. That's why I say if they lose, it's not like their season's done. But if they lose in any sort of fashion like they did against Florida State, I think that locker room could be in a little trouble, Sean. What do you think?
Right now, they're plus 440 to win the SEC over at FanDuel. Still pretty favorable. One of the favorites. But I just don't see it, man. Like you said, this is not, if we lose to Georgia, our opportunity to get to the playoffs are out the window. But Trev, let's be real. At Georgia versus Vandy, at Missouri versus Tennessee, at South Carolina versus LSU versus Oklahoma. And then ending the season at Auburn. Man, let me tell you something. I don't see, not this Alabama team. At minimum, they have another 2 to 3 losses coming, in my opinion, from the schedule I just read off. Unless something drastically changes with the constitution of this team and at the very core of the program under the current head coach. Unless something changes, and it could happen in between the hedges, they might shock us all. They might show up. And at that point, we can all change our mindsets and our opinions. But as of right now, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And maybe they are one of the programs that have suffered from the recent changes in how college football operates with the transfer portal and all those different things, right? And then maybe the recruiting philosophy is different than it was under Nick Saban. You're still going and getting a lot of 5-star, 4-star talent, but what is your philosophy around the guys that you're bringing in? Is it a Pac-12 philosophy that you tried to bring to the SEC? Or is it an SEC philosophy that just really hasn't gotten guys to buy in? So that is something we're going to see. You know what? They always play good games, right? So I'm just going to hang my hat on the fact that it's going to be a competitive game, and it comes down to whether or not Georgia makes plays at home. Because one thing we know, Kirby and his staff are one of the best in the business at halftime adjustments. You saw it against Tennessee. Like, you might get them the first half, but once they see what you have and they get a chance to make some adjustments, they're going to make it tough on you in the second half. So I would hope that Alabama would try to jump out early in this game and try to find a way to win it in the end. Because I don't see them going down early. Like you said, Trev, they get down early, it might get ugly down in Athens. It might get ugly.
Next team, Sean, and I'm going to ping pong this one right back over to you because I think you'd be able to speak on this team a little bit better than I could. I think the Fighting Illini have a lot at stake this week. Now, the loss to Indiana, obviously, I did not see that coming, Sean. I know you didn't either. Not the fact that we didn't expect them to lose or we're shocked and we're beside ourselves that they lost. It's more so the fashion. But at the end of the day, conference play is going to help you out. It was your first in-game. It's your first game in conference. And you have Illinois has a lot of ground that they can make up, but it starts now because like we talked about, if you're out of playoff contention at the start of November, there's not going to be a whole lot of games for Illinois to bounce back. So there's a lot, in my eyes, at stake for Illinois this weekend. Do you see it the same?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do this segment. I'm not going to show my face for this segment because I'm still embarrassed about that performance that they put forth against Indiana. No, in all seriousness, though. Just being really objective about this game, I felt like regardless of last week, I thought it was a big game to make a statement nationally that your program has arrived. But I still felt like this is the game you have in your back pocket if you're not able to get the job done on the road against Indiana. You get USC coming in, a USC team that still struggles defensively. They struggled to protect Luke Altmaier last week. They lost the game in the trenches, especially with a veteran offensive line. That, to me, was disappointing. That's the most disappointing thing from what I saw. They got hit in the mouth early, and it seems like they just backed up. They just bagged up and didn't want to partake in the fight. And so, for me, this week, they should be able to bring the physicality to USC the way Indiana brought it to them, especially with that home energy. And so on the back end, missing Xavier Scott because of that bogus targeting call against these receivers is going to be tough. But they're going to have to kind of like set the tone offensively against USC. They're going to have to set the tone offensively against USC. Get some points on the board, get some stops, a couple of stops in that first half, and then allow their leader on the back end to come back for the second half and help them out with pass coverage. But the fans are going to have to do some damage this week and bring some energy. And it would be a big win. They'll be back on track to at least be in the hunt for the playoffs still if they can go ahead and win this game at home.
Yeah, you and I see that game the same, and they're absolutely still well in contention. And a good bounce-back win against the USC team that, let's call a spade here, they don't travel east well. And so this is a prime opportunity for Illinois to get back on track and kind of put that game against Indiana further and further into the rearview mirror. I agree completely.
We saw Michigan State go out there and put up points and yards against USC. So Purdue didn't put up points, but they put up yards. Michigan State put up points and yards.
Yep.
So that's kind of giving you a preview of what that USC defense is going to be, even when they come into Notre Dame Stadium on October the 18th. So,
Agreed. Last couple teams here, Sean, that I have on my list. They're both out of the Big 12. It is, you want to talk about now or never, do or die situations. It is that time right now for the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, this sounds crazy. They're not making the playoffs, barring them putting together some crazy last second, whatever. But look, man, as weird as it is to say, they are still alive in Big 12 contention. They've only played one conference game, and they're 0-1. But they got to get off on the right foot against UCF. Because look, man, at the end of the day, if you don't beat UCF at home, like that is the nail in the coffin. And like I'm not painting this picture that like if they beat UCF, they're going to go on a run. I'm saying right now the lid on the coffin is on. The dude has the nail, getting ready to hammer it into place, and that's where Kansas State is right now. But beating UCF at home and getting a win like that is one that could maybe generate any sort of momentum that could be left. But that's at stake for Kansas State this week. If you lose to UCF, the season's over. Playoff hopes are already like not even. I mean, you and I are sitting down talking about, hey, I don't even want to think about Notre Dame's playoff chances until, after their second bye week. Got to see them stack a couple of wins. I mean, shoot, man, they're still ranked in the top 25. Whether you agree with it or not, they still are. Kansas State isn't sniffing the top 25 right now. So I would put them in that bucket of what's at stake. And then the last team, Sean, it's Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. They're another team. Look, you get BYU at home. But Colorado is still only 0-1 in the conference. Can Deion get it turned around against this BYU football team? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not betting on anything for Colorado to win at all because they still, and it blows my mind that they still haven't been able to figure this out, but they still haven't been able to figure out how to run the ball and stop the run. Still. And BYU is a rough team to try to do that against. But if they are able to, that might start, you get them back to 500 in conference play. You never know what that looks like for them down the stretch. I'm not banking on it, but those are the two kind of final teams, Sean, in the Big 12 for me that I look at and say, hey, this is what's at stake for you. And that we could be talking about Colorado and Kansas State season being done before October even hits, which is crazy.
Head coach cost him greatly. Panicked. He panicked. After a home win, he panicked. And he went to a quarterback that, no. That's not the right move. You get a new quarterback into your program, into your system, and you just panicked and went to stop, and you have two better quarterbacks in the room. And so now Caden Salter played much better last week. And so now he gets an opportunity at home against BYU, who physically just embarrassed Colorado in that game, that bowl game. Just pushed them around, shut down Shedeur and Travis. That's did whatever they wanted to do offensively. They were running trick plays. I was like, okay, they're trying to literally embarrass Colorado right now. And Colorado as a program should feel a certain way, getting them back this year on their home turf. I just don't. BYU is going to play physical football, man. I'm still waiting for the physicality to show up in Boulder. I'm still waiting. You brought the glam, you brought the cameras, you brought the TV, you brought the attention, revenue dollars, you brought stars to the program when you brought your son and you brought Travis. Now you got to have some substance. Where's the substance? Where is it? Because I don't see it. And this, it must have been for Miles Slusher to leave. It's not like he went to a better situation. Maybe the check was really good. Maybe that Purdue check was really good. But for him, because he was playing and starring at Colorado, and he left Colorado to go to Purdue. Man, that raised my eyebrows. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm like, oh, red flag. What?
I can tell
chose
you
to go
one
to
thing,
Purdue.
Sean. I know the scenic views in West Lafayette, Indiana, aren't as nice as Boulder, Colorado.
No, and
I'll
the
tell you
weather
that.
is about the same. Weather's about the same. Not much difference in the weather,
Yeah,
right?
just no
I
mountain
just
range when you look out of your
no,
dorm. Nah.
no, no, no. There's no way. Even if you have Colorado winning 5 games this year, I don't have Purdue winning 2. I looked at Purdue's schedule. I'm like, oh no, maybe 1, maybe 2. I just don't
Yeah.
understand it. He said,
Crazy.
Irish like that he liked the big drum. That's what. That's
Maybe.
hilarious.
Maybe that was the selling point, Irish for
That's
life. Maybe.
hilarious.
Maybe. But it's a lot of teams with a lot to prove and a lot at stake this weekend, Sean. This is why we love college football. And this is what makes it so entertaining to follow week over week. But, folks, that's going to do it for part 3 of today's show here in the Irish Breakdown podcast. Don't go anywhere. We do have a mailbag coming up to wrap up today's show. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Sean, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we have a daily mailbag coming our way, and that's going to take us home. Feels like it's been a minute since we've done a true mailbag because we finally have Salty Virginia Peanuts, infamous mail bomb. So we have a lot of good questions in here. But where we're going to get started, folks, we have a couple of super chats in here. First one is from Anthony Solomon. Appreciate that, Anthony. He says, thank you for the show, gentlemen. Of course, there's no other way that I'd rather spend a Friday than sitting down, talking some ball, getting to be able to talk Notre Dame football. It's a privilege to be able to do this every day. I'm happy to be here. Sean, I know you are too. So it's a good way to get the weekend started. That's for sure. Another super chat in here from Byron's Best Bets. Good chance I'm not going to be able to say that 5 times in a row. Thank you for the super chat, Byron. Who is Notre Dame's worst starter on defense? I'll rephrase this question because, look, we spent a lot of time talking about the defensive side of the ball. We spent a lot of time talking about where the philosophical lapses has kind of let this unit down. Sean, I'll rephrase it this way, and I want to get your thoughts. Who is a player on defense? Because I still want to do the super chat justice. Who is a player on defense you think needs to take the biggest step forward as the season goes
on? Honestly, to solidify, and I think this goes back to the class, that 23 class is right behind that 22 class in importance, in my opinion. And I'm just going to be flat out. And maybe they found something in this Leonard Moore injury. Maybe they found something moving Christian to boundary where he can be physical, use his size, doesn't have to worry about playing in as much space. And then Leonard Moore, when he comes back, has the ability to play the field. Now you can solidify both of those corners playing at a high level again. Now that makes your defense and gives you a lot of movement on the inside to use the safeties to come down and do different things and go to different packages. So for me, Christian Gray will be one of those guys that I need to see continue to play better. The interior of the defensive line outside of Gabriel Rubio, take your pick. They need to play better. And then the guys that haven't played well in the secondary outside of Christian Gray, I really don't think you're going to see them that much, right? So I don't know if they're true candidates. That's where the youngsters come in. Bryce Young needs to play better. He knows that. But I think, you mentioned Ohio State and their lack of pass rush. That's when you expect, there's too many expectations on Kenyatta Jackson. Like, dude, you had 4 and 5 year guys on the defensive end, and you're expecting this kid to give you that? Come on, man. That's too much. That's too much. And I felt like the expectations for Bryce Young were too much. Like people were talking about him getting double-digit sacks. I'm like, whoa, relax, wait. Let him get to 5. Can he get to 5? 5.5? Maybe 6? Can we get to that level before we get up to double digits? But he still needs to play at that level. Where if he's getting you like half a sack a game,
yeah,
you feel like, okay, he's somebody that's on the radar of the opposing team's game plan each and every week. So those would be my guys.
We see that the same. Christian Gray was at the top of the list for me because, yes, there are some things that Ash has done to the coverage structure that I think puts him in situations where he's not suited to win. With that being said, before Chris Ash came to town, Christian Gray was still having issues with consistency, with holding, with not being able to play zone, with not being able to play off man. And at some point, as good as he is in man coverage, you also just can't ask him to be a press man corner every single play on every single down. He's somebody whose play needs to elevate. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if he has the yips. I don't know if his confidence is shaken. I don't know if he's hurt. Because there's been some things that I've seen, like that missed tackle against Texas A&M, where it's like, okay, if you're not confident enough in your shoulder to be able to tackle a 5'10" wide receiver that weighs 180 pounds, you got to get that looked at. You know what I'm saying? So I would say Christian Gray is on that list for me. And again, that's not to get confused with the worst player on defense. I mean, look, like at the end of the day, they're not being put schematically in advantageous situations. And that has to change philosophically from the top. But just looking at people's individual performances, yeah, I'd say Christian Gray kind of takes that vote for me. Sean Salty put in a couple of game predictions here, and I went through some of mine yesterday with Brian. I wanted to get your thoughts on these. We can kind of go on these rapid fire, but it's just really outcome winners of games. So first one from Salty, who do you have winning, Ohio State or Washington?
I'm going to be bold. I'm going to take the Huskies.
Who in the upset?
Straight up. I'm going to take the Huskies. I'm going to take the Huskies. I'm going to say the environment does some things and Sam makes a couple of mistakes. I'm going to take the Huskies.
I last night in the spread option, I picked Washington to cover because I don't see them losing by more than a touchdown because the spread set at 8.5. But I do still have Ohio State winning. Brian, you're not alone in this, though. Brian stuck with his prediction from the summer, and he also has the Huskies getting the upset over the number 1 team in the country. So, yeah. All right, next game that Salty put in here. Who will win, Alabama or Georgia?
Georgia. We could just we can speed through that one.
All right.
Speed through that one.
How about LSU or Ole Miss?
I'm going to take Ole Miss in this matchup. I really am. I think they score enough points. I really do. I think they score enough points. I know they have their own defensive struggles, and they give up points. But I do think, man, I love the Chambliss kid. He's a gamer.
Yeah, he is.
Ooh-wee. Oh, man. What do you do when Austin Simmons comes back if this kid continues to play like this?
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, hey, Lane Kiffin said that there's not a competition at quarterback, but if Trinidad Chambliss puts on that performance against Arkansas, Tulane, and then finds a way to upset LSU, who's ranked in the top 5, I think there has to be some sort of discussion. Because it's not like Austin Simmons was lighting the world on fire before he got hurt either. I think that's a very interesting discussion. All right, next game here, Sean. Tennessee or Mississippi State?
Oh. Where's that game at? Is it in Starksville?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to rock with Joey Aguilar in the big plays. Yeah, I'm gonna rock with Joey Aguilar in the big plays that they create. Yeah.
Okay.
I think like I'm gonna give Tennessee that matchup. And they got a number 1 receiver that kept Brazil was lighting it up. So yeah, I'm gonna take Tennessee.
I like that. How about Auburn at Texas A&M?
It's petty, but I'm taking Texas A&M. I just believe in Marcel Reed more than the Auburn quarterback. I don't even want to say his name. Dude, man. It's been a trend. Texas high school quarterbacks haven't really fared well in recent history, especially the ones that are ranked highly. Jackson Arnold, Cade Klubnik, they really haven't panned out.
That's fair. Last one of these game predictions here, Sean. Going to the Big Ten, Oregon at Penn State. Who do you got?
I'm gonna go with my dog Dante Moore, man. I'm just no rhyme or reason. That's my dog. It's my dude. I'm pulling for him. His first big road test. I love the combination of him and Decorian Moore. Yeah.
You mean?
But the truth of the matter, if I was being objective, I would choose Penn State at home because I just do not trust. See, here it is. I don't trust Dan Lanning as much as I don't trust Squidward up there in Happy Valley, right? As much as I don't trust him, I think I trust Dan Lanning less. So I'll give you my pick by my heart is Oregon, but my objective pick is Penn State at home with the whiteout. Bro. He doesn't look like Squidward to you, bro. You know he does.
Oh my
goodness. You know James Franklin does, dude.
Oh no.
SpongeBob.
Not Squidward, no. Oh no. Oh, that's so good. All righty. Back up to the top here. We got Berto 21-21. In either loss this year, had Notre Dame lost either in a more dominant fashion and not by single digits, do you guys think Marcus Freeman makes changes to the defense immediately?
I mean, it's speculative to say yes, but I think he should be more fired up because they lost by single digits. He should be even more irritated by that. I think it would give you greater ease if you got beat by double digits. Like, okay, we might not be as good as I thought. But for him to know we are talented, we are a good team. Yeah, that would irritate me even more. So.
Agreed. Because, I mean, I think it would also, and I'm glad that it didn't happen, but I think it would also settle fans down a little bit more too. Like if Notre Dame got blown out by Miami and Texas A&M,
yeah,
we would then sit down and have a realistic conversation around, okay, like what is the talent level of this team? Was there something that we missed when we evaluated them in the preseason? But knowing they were so close because of the schematic changes, I think makes it even more frustrating. Sean, I agree with you. I agree completely. One in here from James Mertz. What does a current recruiting pitch to a defensive player look like with how bad the defense and defensive coordinator look? Sean, I think this is kind of more up your alley. What do you think?
First of all, you're telling them, dude, we're fine. We're going to win games. We're still going to get to the playoffs. That's what I'm telling guys. And recruits don't, what we say it all the time, recruits have to see a crack. I use a perfect example. Recruits have to see a crack in the program, not the loss. They have to see a crack in the program. Right now, Clemson's program looks broken. The program looks broken. The way Dabo is presenting himself looks broken. He's sitting up there copping out before the Syracuse game. We might go 6-6 this year. What are you talking about? Who says that? Who literally admits that might happen going into a big game? So you add all that together, the health of that program versus the health of the Notre Dame program, where you literally feel like, dude, this team should have won at Miami. They shouldn't have won at Texas A&M. The roster is full of talent. Clemson, you can't say their roster is full of talent. That's the problem. The secondary has no depth and talent. The defensive line that was highly rated, underperforming. You went out and got Tom Allen as a defensive coordinator. He hasn't fixed it. It's broken. Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman don't look like that. They don't feel like that. They just had 2 negative outcomes with the games against Miami and Texas A&M, and the buzz amongst 26 and 27 recruits are still the same. And Marcus Freeman is still a star in these recruiting streets. That hasn't changed. The losses didn't change that. He's still a star in these recruiting streets. So, no, I don't think you really need to make a pitch. You talk about the defensive backs, Ace Austin, Tavares Harrington, Joshua Dobson, all of those highly ranked defensive backs over there. They were still talking about loving the way Notre Dame plays man-to-man because that's what they want to do. They don't, okay, they gave us some plays, but I want to come to a place where they play man-to-man. They still see that. And like I said, Mike Mickens is still hot out here in these defensive back streets in recruiting. So a lot needs to happen before we end up where Clemson is, and now we start seeing decommitments and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. Here's another one in here from Salty, Sean, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, because we talked about this earlier in the week. It's around Mike Gundy. So should Mike Gundy have been fired 4 games into this season? What's your read on that, Sean?
Mike Gundy was begging to be fired. Mike Gundy wanted to get out. That's my take on it. The moment he stood up there and threw the donors at Oklahoma State and allowed everybody to know that they only gave him $4 million as a foot, he was begged, fire me. I'm letting everybody know that I'm not getting the support I need. I'm going up here to face a 40 million football team in Oregon, and I'm working with $4 million. Like, wait, what? You telling people what's in your pocket?
Crazy.
Okay, so now you're just putting Oklahoma State on Front Street. Because I know I was looking at Oklahoma State like with the side eye. $4 million? Word? I thought Boone Pickens couldn't give you another 5, 10. I think he was begged. I think he wanted to get out. That's my honest. He had been there long enough. And that was his statement publicly. Like, man, look, if you're going to get rid of me now. Because this is crazy. Because I'm tired of asking for money. I'm tired of asking for support. And they won't give it to me. So I'll just let you know. It is what it is. And so they got rid of him. He'll get another job. He'll probably take a couple of years off. I think Gundy will actually be good as an analyst in studio.
Oh, his personality? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
If I were a TV exec, I would definitely look at him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, right now, though, man, Oklahoma State's down pretty bad. They're down pretty bad. On FanDuel, their over-under win total for the season is now at 2.5. And it's plus odds for them to be over 2.5.
Yeah.
It's a rough look, man. That is a rough look. Got one in here from Trevor Rocket. Trevor and Sean, name one player on offense and one on defense who needs to step up Saturday against Arkansas. So this is specific to their matchup. Sean, who do you got offense and defense? And then I'll give you mine.
I'm going to go ahead and say Christian Gray on defense, especially if Leonard Moore doesn't play. He might have to, face up against Blake in some key situations. So, I want to see my boy step up, play another good game, and kind of improve upon the Purdue game. Offensively, man, you take your pick amongst the wide receivers, bro. That Arkansas secondary is, man, you want to talk about, and we're complaining about the Notre Dame secondary. It's one thing to complain about the Notre Dame secondary, and you have talent. It's another thing to complain about your secondary. And there is a lack of depth and talent. That means you don't have a lot of answers. At least Notre Dame has some things to try and some answers. So, yeah, Malachi is going to have a day. They always target Jordan. So the passing game has to step up. Trev, I think the passing game early is going to make some plays.
I think
because
so
the one thing Arkansas consistently has done is stop the run under Travis Williams. They struggle with running quarterbacks and teams that have running quarterbacks, although they did a pretty good job. Austin Simmons, I think Chambliss is probably a little bit more dangerous than Austin Simmons running the football, and they face off against Austin Simmons, but it's going to be tough, man. And I had empathy for Arkansas and Sam Pittman until I heard their players. I don't think they were doing it on purpose. It just made me mad. They kept referring to Jeremiah Love as Jordan Love, acting like they didn't know his name. Like, oh man, what's his name? 4 and 24. Like, okay, we playing games now. Okay, you know, I promise you know their names because I know your coach has said their names all week in meetings. Now you want to get in front of the media and act like, we play big games all the time. Okay, all right. So I'll say wide receiver outside of the top two and Christian Gray on defense. That's what I'll say.
No, I agree. My one player on offense is Anthony Knapp. Has to step up. Because one player I am concerned with on Arkansas's defense is Quincy Rhodes. He's a 6'6", 275-pound edge rusher, leads the team in tackles for loss, pressures, and sacks.
He was the one that forgot their names.
I bet.
Yes.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll keep my comments to myself.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, though, Sean. Anthony Knapp has to improve marginally in pass protection. He doesn't have to be Joe Alt. He doesn't have to be Ronnie Stanley. But you can't let free rushers go untouched. Can't. Just can't. And then on defense, player that I'm going to keep my eye on is Tay Johnson at field corner. I think him getting inserted into the starting lineup is going to allow Adon Shuler to be who he is, an alley safety that flies downhill, blows up plays, blows up screens. I think in the rotation that people are allowed to play, I think Tay Johnson's your rangiest safety that's been rotating in. Because Jalen Stroman's just kind of a taller version of Adon Shuler, and Luke Talich is a taller version of Jalen Stroman. Not saying one is good or bad. I'm just saying Tay Johnson on the back end is your rangiest coverage guy. And Taylon Green has not been shy about taking shots down the field in this Bobby Petrino.
No, I tip my cap to Taylon Green, boy. He fit some throws in against Memphis. He was threading the needle. I was like, okay. I don't know if you can take those chances against Notre Dame, but
Yep. I mean, look, man, Taylon Green on the season, he's gone 28 of 50 for over 600 passing yards on throws 10 yards or longer down the field. 239 of those yards have came on throws 20 yards or longer down the field. He has 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They will take shots, especially if you go and roll back the film on what Notre Dame's defense has allowed down the field this year. I would also take shots against this defense. Tay Johnson is going to have to show why he is your rangiest coverage guy. And that's who I see, Trevor, to answer your question about what players who need to step up. And when I view step up, I don't think of like they played bad and they have to be better. It's just, hey, these guys individually have to have good games because of what the opposing team does well. So Anthony Knapp on offense, Tay Johnson on defense. Sean, we got another one in here from our guy Salty again. He put in a good amount of them. These two kind of go hand in hand. So first part of this one from Salty, which team has been your most positive surprise to date?
Man, my immediate answer would be I guess I can say Indiana has been a surprise to me. I really think they've taken a step forward. I tip my cap to Signetti. I think they're a tough out in that Big Ten, man. They're a tough out. They really have gotten better, particularly running the ball. I think Mendoza is absolutely perfect for what they do as a quarterback. And then they brought back their two wide receivers, right? And they've just gotten better, Surratt and Cooper. So, man, I'm impressed with Indiana. I really am because I expected them maybe to take another year before they look like they could potentially be at least a team to go into the playoffs and get a win. Like I'm starting to believe, all right, they might be ready to go into the playoffs and actually win a game and challenge in game two. Because I didn't expect that. Like that was a statement last week. That was a statement like, no, we're not down here with these other dudes. Like we're right on the heels of Ohio State, Oregon, and they'll get an opportunity against those teams. So we'll see. But early on, pleasant surprise. I think another pleasant surprise for me, honestly, has been Ohio State has been a pleasant surprise, man. Right? But that's, par for the course. Georgia's offense has been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
To me, like, wow. Steve Angeli was a pleasant surprise early on. So I guess Syracuse would be that. Vanderbilt, definitely. Oh, man.
Hey, man.
Let me tell you something, man. The two quarterbacks that were talking cash money in the offseason, Florida State and Vanderbilt, they bagged their quarterbacks up. Both of their quarterbacks were talking crazy in the offseason.
Yep.
Crazy. And both of their teams, their boys have had their backs. So, I would put Florida State and Vanderbilt right there at the top. Like,
yep. I see that the same. Florida State's mine, Sean. Like,
yeah.
I understand the win against Bama. They haven't played anybody since. But, like, look, man, if you watched Florida State last year, they didn't look like they wanted to put on the shoulder pads. They didn't look like they wanted to put on the cleats. They didn't look like they wanted to put on the helmet. Nothing. And this team is taking fights to people, bro. Florida State looks legit right now. We're going to find out. They're on the road against Virginia tonight, and Virginia's off. You want to talk about a surprise? I did not think that Virginia was going to look on offense the way that they were going to look this year. Man.
After losing their best receiver.
Man. But
I think it comes, I think reality hits tonight.
I think so too.
But to your point, this is going to say a lot about the focus of Florida State.
Yes.
Because they know what's looming.
Yeah.
They know. Boy, you talking about the revival of one of the biggest rivalries next week? Dude, you talking about a big Florida State Miami game?
Yeah, bro.
Man. Yo. This shows me whether or not they can focus as a team. Like, we have to take care of business this week, and we can't look forward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this has trap game written all over it for the Seminoles. Could not agree more. But they've really impressed me. Sean, flip side of the coin here real quick. How about a negative surprise? Team that has surprised you, maybe not in the way that you wanted to be surprised. And
not counting Notre Dame?
I was just about to say, not counting not counting the boys. Yeah.
Clemson, without question.
Bro.
I didn't think it was this bad. Like, me and Brian have been going back since like 2021, right? Because Brian loves Dabo, love the stance he took. Well, Brian can explain it. I'll speak for myself because he's not on the show. I didn't like the stance he took around certain issues around 2021 socially. Not to say there was anything wrong with his beliefs, just the way you went about it was questionable. And I thought it was going to come across a certain way to recruits moving forward. I made that statement at the time. And then the stance he took on the transfer portal, I was like, you're being a little bit too, you're doing too much. Like, I understand you're making solid points, but this train is out of the station. It's moving with or without you, buddy. So you're too late. You're too late. Like, either you're going to be part of it and get on the train, or you're going to get run over. And right now, he's getting run over, right? And then he thought that big win, standing in the middle of the field after beating Sam Hartman and the Fighting Irish at Clemson, like, Clemson stock is still, if you bought Clemson stock after that game, because he advised you to buy Clemson stock. That's what he told you. If I were you, I would buy Clemson stock. Well, you lost a lot of value in that stock if you bought it after that game because it's bottoming out right now. So, hey, Clemson it's ugly right now. And you know another reason why it's ugly? Because I believe Fran Brown is coming. I think Fran Brown is building something. I really do. And he's going to have Steve possibly for another year or two moving forward, which means his quarterback is settled in that offense. Now he can go out and build up that defense. He can recruit. Dude, in the middle of the field after the Clemson game, Trev, you had like 5 Clemson players finding him to hug him. I'm like, what the heck is going on? He hasn't even hugged Dabo yet. And Clemson players are coming to hug this dude. It's like he's so relatable, man. It's almost like he's come in the wake of Marcus Freeman and caught that same wave. And he's become that next coach that's relatable. And so I think he's going to attract I think he's going to get a lot of good players up to Syracuse moving forward. So, and with Clemson not being that flag bearer anymore and coming back to the pack, it's a chance for another program in the ACC to kind of come take that number 1 spot. Will it be Syracuse? Will it be Miami? You do know Syracuse beat Miami last year. So don't just think Miami's just going to walk over Syracuse this year. There's a lot of teams vying for that ACC top billing, I think, with Clemson taking a step back. That was my negative rant on Dabo and Clemson. Because they did the most after that Notre Dame win on the field. I didn't like it. They tried to use that as a big win. And we all knew that Notre Dame team really wasn't it. But now, get that same speech now. I still can't believe that dude stood in front of the media and said we might go 6-6 this year.
That's crazy.
That was wild, man.
Yeah.
Who you got?
Clemson was at the top of the list for me just because of their roster.
Yeah.
Who they got on defense. Kansas State is on that list for me. I feel bad because I feel like just once a week I just dog on Kansas State.
Yeah, I really wasn't high on them coming into the year, though.
And then, like we said, like outside of Notre Dame, I mean,
Arizona State and Mississippi State lost kind of. Yeah. I expected them to be better.
Yeah.
I expect them to be better. I can tell you Texas Tech has down on the pod. Let me go back to the pod. Texas Tech, what they did to Utah, they did to Utah what Utah did to UCLA. And Utah is a decent team. So that's far more impressive. Yeah, Texas Tech on the positive side definitely is a big surprise. They spent enough money, though. They spent enough money.
They did.
Texas, is that really Texas or is it like Arch as a disappointment?
I mean, I think you could even make the argument that, like, if you look at the big picture for Texas since Steve Sarkisian has been there, isn't that just kind of who Texas has been?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you have the big name quarterback. You get Quinn Ewers from Ohio State, and then and then you get Arch Manning. You have a bunch of young, impressive, skilled talent, and it's like they're going to beat everybody else that they play on their schedule until they play an opponent of like equal or greater talent, and then it's like then they kind of fall off. That's what Texas was last year. That's what they were in 2023. So it's kind of like, I'm not ready to call them like a disappointment yet, because so far they're just showing me it's like you're kind of just you've been what you have been in the SEC, a good team, not an elite team yet. And that's how I view Texas, personal. But that's just me, though.
Yeah, like you said, it's programs like that. Well, we know the regular season means nothing to Texas, man. They're just going to out talent teams in the SEC. The Texas Oklahoma can be viewed as a surprise, because now I see that Texas Oklahoma game coming up. Like, oh wow, that's going to be a good one.
I mean, it's going to be the biggest Red River shootout that we've seen in quite some time.
In quite some time. Yeah.
That game is always good. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like it's always a shootout. It's always fun. Well, I guess last year wasn't a shootout, but most of the time it's a shootout. But like, I mean, there are like legitimate playoff implications in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be fun, man. We got a lot of good games coming up, man.
Yeah,
a lot of good football coming up, right? I think this year is far more intriguing even than last year, where I felt like you knew Ohio State brought all their talent back for a reason. You knew Penn State was going to be good, right? You knew Oregon was going to be good. Like, you just had the top 3 or 4 teams that you knew were going to be there. This year, even the top team, Ohio State had questions. Texas had questions, right? You talk about the surprises that we mentioned. It's just really interesting because there's so much intrigue, and we're finding everything out in real time about these players and about these teams, and it makes for a captivating regular season that could probably lead to a very captivating playoff at the end of the day. That's a great question, Salty.
That is.
Good, both questions.
Couple more in here, Sean, and then we got to get out of here for today. Got one in here from Cajun Irish. Should Landau be in question with the big guys? Maybe the defensive line is not up to par and power and strength to get off blocks.
Well, look. I thought my wife was going out the door. I thought the chime was about to come on. That's why I muted myself for a quick second.
Good.
I think she disconnected it before she went out. The lack of size is not on him. I'm gonna be honest, right? One of the game I'm going to watch tonight here in Chicago. 3 kids on one team from the 27 to 28 classes are right in the crosshairs for Notre Dame. It's a Catholic school, city of Chicago, plenty of Notre Dame ties within the school and on the staff. Notre Dame should get all 3 of these kids, right? The first one is the number 1 defensive end in the 28 class. He's a 5-star. And when I tell you he's a 5-star, like, he jumps off the field. I don't care who they play. Your eyes are fixated on him. He's that good. Cameron McGee. Braden Parks, 305 pounds. You give Lauren Landau better product to work with. Don't give him 250 to beef up the 290. And then when they lose explosiveness and speed and quickness, then you question whether or not he's doing his job. That's my opinion as a strength and conditioning coach. Like, the better product you give the strength and conditioning coach, the better he's going to look. It's just as simple as that for me. Like, the ballooning process That's difficult ask. You might have one or two guys, right? Joe Alt was one of those guys, but you don't go out and get a class full of Joe Alts. That's not how you recruit the offensive line. You don't go get guys that need to gain 20, 30 pounds to keep the athleticism and end up being a first round pick. That it happened at Notre Dame. I wouldn't do that consistently. And so someone asked the question the other day, I think on the board, would you rather have projects defensively on the D line or on the offensive line? And I say I would much rather do it on the offensive line because that speed, technique, quickness, as long as the footwork is good, they pick up weight. I would feel more comfortable with that. I said, if I'm trying to get a guy to gain weight on the interior to be 290, 230, and I'm like, I just don't know. So that's how I see it, Trev. I don't blame Lando for what he's been given, but if it's his job to make guys stronger, and then that's something that still falls at his feet. He can't avoid that.
I mean, I think to a degree, look, one, let me say this. Do I think it's Lauren Landau? No, I don't. Again, I think the lack of, and I don't even think I don't even think that the D line has been the bulk of the problem on defense. I don't. And some people might disagree with me. I think it's more secondary. I think it's more linebackers and not the performance of any one individual player, but what they're being asked to do. Here's the way that I look at this. It could be right. It could be wrong. We praised Junior Tuihalamaka for coming in second in pressures last season. We talked about how good Howard Cross was. Sheldon Day was an undersized interior defensive lineman. So we can't use, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, Sean. I'm not saying that Cajun Irish is doing this. But we can't use size as a negative when the entire defense is underperforming, but we can't not address it if they're doing well. You know what I'm saying? It's like Howard Cross was 6'2", 280 pounds, maybe. I know he was listed at 285. You look at him and he's not 285 pounds. Like Sheldon Day was an electric interior player. He wasn't 6'5", 387. Donovan Heinisch came in second on the team in sacks last year. He is 6'2", 277. I think this goes back to how that they were used. Because, your bigger interior players like Gabe Rubio, Jason Onye, Elijah Hughes, those are your guys over 300 pounds. I thought they've played relatively well this season. Gabe Rubio specifically, and he's your biggest dude. Now, the counter argument to that is, so you're telling me, Trev, that the biggest dude on the defensive line has played the most consistent? Yes. So I'm not saying that size is completely, a non-factor. But I think it's somewhere in between. But Cajun Irish, to answer this in short, no. I don't think that it's Lauren Landau. They're not getting pushed around because they're weak. That's not the case at all. I don't think. So that's where I am along the defensive line. But yes, to Sean's point, they do need to recruit more guys. How'd you word it, Sean? I think last time we talked about that, you said as is, parts assembled.
Yes. No assembly required.
No assembly
required. 305, yep. 320 out the gate. Oh, okay. Lauren Landau is probably going to be like, now
yeah,
I can just focus on making you stronger instead of trying to get you to gain weight. And then while you gain weight, keep your quickness. And then at the same time, make you strong. That's a lot rather than just getting the 305 that's already athletic at 305. And now we can just sculpt you.
Yep.
Work on your technique. Yeah. No assembly required, man. That's what we want, baby. No assembly required. Get those guys. Carlos May out of Birmingham, Alabama. Get him. Braden Parks. Get him. Like you said, Richie Flanagan, he committed. It's a project. In my opinion, he should be the only project along the defensive line in the class. That's it. You got your project. You got your project on the D-line, and I love his quickness. I love his film, love his quickness. He could probably get up to 285, be a Heinisch type, but in the rotation, if you build the room to where he's a third or fourth guy, that's your third or fourth guy, now you're cooking with grease. Because you got guys up front at 305, 320, 315 that are killing it. And so I think, honestly, that's the direction. For what I'm seeing, the guys that they're evaluating and recruiting, Al Washington is learning. He's learning, and he came into a situation where sometimes you have to give grace, but some guys just have it immediately. And I think he came into a situation where he had a room that really was kind of given to him. He was kind of blessed, where he had a room that was like, okay, I have guys that I'm going to have for multiple years. So I think he kind of took a chance on some projects, like taking some guys that were big ends, trying to convert them inside. It didn't work out, and do some other things. And then by the time the guys that he inherited ended up leaving, he tried to get, Sean Sibiliano Jr. We still haven't seen him on the field. Davion Dixon, who we heard good things about this summer, he still hasn't gotten on the field. And so I think now he's really doing a good job of going and getting top guys. He missed on Justin Scott. It's okay. We can let that one go. All right. He missed. He didn't get him. But I'll be honest with you, for the next 3 years, he doesn't have to go any further than Chicago for defensive linemen. I'm telling you, Trev, 27, 28, he just comes 70 miles down the road. It's plenty. It's a 3 in the 28 class. It's a kid that's 330, Caleb Tucker at Mount Carmel. 330 and moves like a deer at 330 with power. Dude. It's like, and I know Notre Dame is on him. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I speak to the fact that I know Al Washington he recognizes what's needed on the inside. So
I'm with you, man. I mean, I think that's why the 26 commits so far are so impactful. Itade, Dunham, Hola, Golden. I mean, yeah, definitely steps in the right direction. I'm with you completely. Last couple here, Sean. We got one in here from Johnny S3. This is an interesting one. If Ash gets the defense right for the rest of these games, does it buy him another year, and should it, in your opinion?
I'll say it like this, Trev, and then you can go ahead and finish it up. If it gets right, it's because the players got it right. Because I still don't I don't trust Ash play calling and sequencing right now. They're sequencing and play calling, right? That is genius. Just like offensive coordinators set things up for later in the game, defensive coordinators can do the same thing. They can set things up for pivotal moments and big moments later in the game. I don't trust his sequencing, his play calling yet. But if and when these play, whatever they're being asked, if the players finally get it and the talent takes over, yeah, they're going to make them look good, and they're going to make his system look good because they're just that talented. All of a sudden, if Bryce Young starts rushing the passer consistently and Boubacar gets fully healthy and starts applying pressure, things are going to look better because the players are doing it. That's me being nice, Trev. So now I'll leave the rest of the meat on the bone for you. Have at it, bro. I was being nice. I wanted to be the nice guy on that one.
That'll do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Be sure to look. Let me say it like this, Sean. And this might be an answer that you might not be expecting me to give. If the defense turns around, there had to be a philosophical change. Yes, I understand like players might take over, but in all seriousness, The talent's there. We've been saying that all along, Sean. That's why we're so frustrated. It'd be different if we just didn't think that they had the talent and it's like, oh, what the heck, Chris Ash? But they have the talent. So that's not the issue. If this defense turns around legitimately, it's because there's been a philosophical change. And if that happens, then yeah, I think Chris Ash does buy himself another year. Whether people want to hear that conversation right now or not, I think that it does. And here's why. I wasn't in love with, I thought he was the guy eventually, and that's not where I'm at right now with Chris Ash. But I wasn't completely bought in on Marcus Freeman doing what he was going to do in 2024 at the start of 2022. People forget that, I mean, Marcus Freeman's tenure wasn't like it was off to a great start. You lose to Ohio State on the road. Then you come home, you lose to Marshall. And then you barely beat Cal. Who at that point in time was like, yeah, Notre Dame's going to play for a national championship in about 3 seasons? I wasn't on that train. Then they finally get things turned around. Then you lose to Stanford, a team that hadn't beaten a Power 5 opponent since 2019. You lose to them at home at night. You know what I'm saying, Sean? It's like, look, I love Mike Denbrock, and his track record was fantastic. Who, after the 3rd game last season, was like, yeah, Mike Denbrock's about to turn up in South Bend? I wasn't. Watching it, like the Texas A&M win was good. No passing touchdown. I mean, it took Notre Dame 4 games, 3.5 games to throw their first passing touchdown. People forget about that. So, like, now, because of the talent on defense, I'm not going to give Chris Ash the same level of grace, because you walked into a situation where you were handed the keys to a Rolls Royce. And right now you're treating it like a Mitsubishi Eclipse, and not the cool one from Fast and the Furious. Okay? Like, that's where I don't give Chris Ash the grace. That's the difference. But I am willing to say if they change, it's because there's a philosophical change. It's not because the players just say, you know what, man, screw this. We're just going to start doing our own thing. Because then you start getting into the realm of losing the locker room. So that is the difference with Chris Ash. Because you were handed the keys to something so nice and you tried to fix something that wasn't broken, that's where the issue lies for me with him. But reality of the situation is Notre Dame has 9 regular season games left, including the one that they're going to be playing in about 20 hours. If we start to see a philosophical change and he turns this defense loose and he allows them to play more aggressively, then yeah, I would say so. I'd be willing to give him grace. Now, does that mean I'm signing him to a 5-year extension and giving him whatever he wants on a blank check? No, that doesn't mean that either. Because next year is going to be, okay, Coach Ash, hope you learned your lessons from 2025. Here's the talent we have on this roster. Do with it what you should. That's what I think. So to answer your question, Johnny 3, that's where I see this. Because if there is a change, it's a philosophical change. It's not, well, he called more man and not zone. Does that mean we bring him back for another year? No. Because at some point that talent, to Sean's point, will start taking over, but it won't be able to fully take over unless there's a philosophical and identity change on defense. And you do need Chris Ash to be the driver of that. So does that make sense, Sean? I that's how I see it.
It made perfect sense. You know, I just tried to give a positive side to it.
Yeah.
No need for us to double down on what you just pointed out. And I agree with you. I just think it gets to a point where, you know, we can break it down. Man, you can call the worst call in the world, and you just have a dude that makes a play or makes a shot. Yeah, and you'll get credit for the call, and people won't know that somebody was breaking open right at the moment that the pass rusher hit the quarterback. And if he had just half a second, it would have been totally different. Those are the types of things that unless you have the film, you just don't understand how great players save games and save play calls on a consistent basis.
Oh,
Like they just
absolutely.
blow things up. So
I'll say this though, John E3. My answer was based on this scenario of the defense getting right for the remainder of the games. My faith in that happening is a completely different question entirely. So that's where I'm at ultimately with this question, Sean, at the end of the day. Last two questions here, Sean. One from Joseph Barrett. If Arkansas loses badly, let's say Notre Dame wins by 21 points, please, Lord, let that be the case. 21 points or more. Is that it for Sam Pittman? What do you think?
well, from talking to the people inside the program this week, it's already over. I flat out asked, the Arkansas insider, John Neighbors, I said, is this a save Coach Pittman's job game for the players? And he was like, nah, nope. Everybody's already done. Mine's already made up within the fan base. So I think it's just a matter of whether or not how they're going to do it. Are they respectfully going to allow him to finish out the season and part ways, or if it's a blowout at home tomorrow on that big stage, man, Joseph is they could choose to go ahead and expedite. Like, you know what? Let's just pull the scab off. Just tear it off and let's get it over it. I think, because then I thought about this. Even if they felt that way, because that was a debilitating loss to the fan base last week, especially coming off the way they lost to Ole Miss. To have losses like that back to back, it was like, all right. But as John Davis said, the only reason the stadium will be filled is because they have Notre Dame coming. If it was anybody else outside of Georgia and like the big time programs, people wouldn't be showing up. And that tells you a lot. So I think Notre Dame coming in might have saved his job. Because you're not about to have your team face Notre Dame with an interim coach. You're not going to do that to your players. So I think he's done. Regardless of if they lose badly, it might speed it up. But either way, I think his time is done down in Fayetteville.
Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it here for us today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. If you haven't gotten enough of me and Sean, we will be on the post-game show. And I am beyond excited that we're going to be doing a post-game show when the sun's up. How about that, Sean? How about that? Look at us. Hey,
well, Trev, you're right. We probably finish around what, 7, 6, 7?
Oh, I didn't even think about.
Yeah, game would be over about 2.
Let me say this. The time of our post-game show ending will vary depending on what the outcome of the game is. I could say that. That's for sure.
Yes.
I could say that for sure. But I mean, game will be over with probably 2:30, 3 o'clock my time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I'm just happy to start the post-game show when the sun's up. When it ends is just kind of up to us.
Up to us and the fans? Yeah.
Yep, up to us and the fans. But at the end of the day, if you haven't gotten enough of me and Sean, we'll be on the post-game show tomorrow. I'm sure Brian, he's actually on his way to the game right now. That's why I was on the RTCF show today. So praying for safe travels for Brian. Hope he makes it down to Fayetteville safe and sound. Looks like the weather is pretty nice down there right now. So hopefully he makes it there safe and sound. Now, be sure to tune in to IB Nation Sports Beat tonight. There is a member of the Irish Breakdown community that will be on tonight who has not been on shows with us for the last couple weeks. He's been nursing and rehabbing, so make sure to give him a warm welcome back on tonight's show. So make sure you pop on over and see him. But Sean and I will be back on the post-game show tomorrow. Brian will also likely be on there with us at some point as well. Maybe Vince is going to be on there with us too. So make sure you want to check that out. But before you head out of here, folks, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family.
Oh, did we lose Trev? Don't forget to go to boardsirishbreakdown.com, share the podcast, go follow us. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. It helps with the views. Leave your comments and questions. And there you go, Trev. I was just filling in for you. Froze a little bit. So,
man, you want to talk about? I got to find a new internet provider, man. I need to put in a note to my landlord here. This is crazy. Anyways, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. As always, best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow, that's Sean. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.